Once on Earth reigned chaos from which came monsters that destroyed everything in their path. But along with this came brave heroes who could resist them and save humanity from destruction. One day Shishao was born. Although he did not have unique abilities, his classmates constantly harassed him. And in the life of the young hero, an event happened that put at risk his happy family, which was cut in half before his eyes. At that moment, Shishao and his family were attacked by a giant spider monster that appeared out of nowhere. The young hero covers his family with his body from the monster's strike, but finds himself in a death-defying position. Suddenly, an information panel appears in front of the spider monster. Then the young hero falls into a strange dimension where he is called the Lord of Accounts. Then the hero flashes a bright light that illuminates the entire battlefield and throws aside the dangerous monster. The young hero becomes stronger several times and begins his journey from a novice to the Lord of Accounts. The story moves back a few days, and the young protagonist's family joins him in celebrating his birthday. Shishao smiled broadly with a crown on his head, happy that today was a holiday. The young hero's sister hugs her brother tightly and asks him to tell her what wish he made. Then the young hero rubs his nose and smiles, saying that he wants to live indefinitely with his family. A loud explosion is heard at that moment, and the entire city is engulfed in flames and chaos. The young hero leans on the room floor and watches in horror as his family flies downward from a great height. Then a vast monster appears before Shishao and stares at him with a piercing gaze. Shao screams in fear at the sight of the monster and doesn't know what to do in such a situation. At that moment, the young hero's loud shout echoes throughout the class, and all the students turn in his direction in surprise. The young hero is holding onto his head and trying to come to his senses after a nightmare in which he loses his entire family. At this point, the teacher points his finger toward the young hero and asks him to tell about the age of the monsters. And the young hero absent-mindedly rubs the back of his head and apologizes for falling asleep during class. After that, he coughs and is about to talk about the beginning of the emergence of the age of monsters. However, the teacher stops the young hero and asks him to sit at his desk and listen carefully to his lecture. He then spreads his arms apart, shows a holographic map of the Earth, and talks about the new age of monsters. At this moment, Shishao stands silently and listens to the teacher's story despite knowing it very well. A few hours pass, classes end, and the students leave the academy building to go about their business. Shishao is also heading home, but is stopped by a classmate named Luo Feng, who has 2 students behind him. Luo Feng approaches the young hero and demands him to pay for his protection. However, Shishao folds his arms across his chest and says he refuses to pay Luo Feng for his safety. Immediately afterward, Luo Feng gave a decisive blow to Shishao's stomach, causing him to clench his teeth in unbearable pain. But after that, Luo Feng sees someone's foot heading towards his face and opens his mouth in surprise. The young hero's sister punishes her brother's abuser without delay and delivers a severe blow to Luo Feng's head. After that, the other students look at the young hero's sister with surprise and realize it's time for them to run away from her. Shi Yunfei stares menacingly in the direction of her brother's abusers and demands that they get the hell out of there immediately. She then places her hands on her sides and watches as the bullies run away from her and the young hero wipes the blood from his lips. Then Shi Yunfei leans over to his brother and asks him to ignore the fact that he is low level compared to others. And the young hero strokes his sister on the head and thanks her for her help. Shishao heads home with her sister while the sun gradually goes behind the horizon and illuminates their silhouettes. When the young hero gets home, his whole family greets him with smiles and wishes him a happy birthday. However, Shishao looks worried because, in his nightmare, a monster attacked during his birthday party. The young hero puts the cake on the table and suggests the whole family take a walk through the city's streets. A few hours later, Shishao and his family leave the restaurant and rejoice that nothing bad happened. Suddenly, however, there is a massive explosion, and the father of the family protects his entire family with his body. Meanwhile, a strange dark hole appears in the center of the explosion, and people scatter in different directions. Minutes later, a spider-like monster emerges from the hole, looking around at all the people around it with predatory eyes. Then it heads towards Shishao and his family to destroy them and raise their level. At that moment, the family's father rushes forward and confronts the monster alone. He jumps high up and concentrates powerful energy streams in his hands to defeat the monster. He makes many attacks, but the spider monster laughs at him because they don't damage. After that, the monster makes a quick strike and delivers a critical blow to Shishao's father, who falls to the ground. At that moment, the family's mother tearfully heads towards her husband. She asks her children to run away as fast as possible from here. But in that instant, she receives a decisive blow on her back from the monster and screams in unbearable pain. The spider monster throws the girl aside with another blow and heads towards the young hero's father. It looms over him and opens its maw to devour his body and gain a new level. However, at that moment, several arrows fly into one of the monster's paws, damaging it. Meanwhile, Shi Yunfei loads his bow and prepares to fire another shot at the monster to save his father's life. The monster is enraged by this prank and tries to attack Shi Xiao's sister, but the girl manages to bounce away at the last moment. Afterward, Shi Yunfei turns to his brother and asks him to escape this dangerous place as quickly as possible. Shi Xiao looks at the monster with fear in his eyes. He is very scared and doesn't understand what to do in such a difficult situation. At this moment, the monster rushed towards Shi Yunfei. It pierced through her body, thus causing the girl to suffer significant damage. The young hero's sister falls to the ground and squirms in pain after being struck by the monster. Then the monster gets close to the girl and is about to send her to the other world to continue his feast. Yunfei watches in horror as the monster points its sharp fangs at her, but it doesn't move. But at that moment, a young hero comes to the aid of his sister. He stops the blow with his bare hands and looks at the monster with fury in his eyes. Then he turns to his sister and asks her to run as fast as possible from this place, and at that moment, he gets a critical hit. The young hero falls to the ground, and suddenly, an information panel with many lines appears above his body. Meanwhile, Shi Yunfei looks at her brother with bitterness in her eyes, intends to avenge him, and heads off towards the monster. The spider monster lets out a scream, but it does not scare the young hero's sister, who continues to run towards the monster. The monster stares at the girl intently as he prepares to send her to the grave with one blow. A second later, a loud sound passes over the monster's head, and the young hero, shrouded in bright flames, strikes the monster with a blow. Because of the blow, the spider flies away for several meters, and the young hero appears in front of his sister and promises to protect her from the monster. Currently, Shi Yunfei looks at his brother with astonishment and cannot believe that Shi Xiao possesses such tremendous strength. Meanwhile, with malice in his eyes, the monster strives towards the young hero to send him to the other world. Shi Xiao takes a fighting stance and prepares to make a powerful strike against the monster to protect his sister. There is a loud explosion behind the hero, and he heads towards the spider monster at great speed. Once he reaches the monster, several lightning bolts strike the monster's body and cause considerable damage to the beast. After that, a fiery blade appears in Shi Xiao's hand, which he uses to strike the spider's limbs. However, the young hero soon falls to the ground and coughs up blood because his body is unused to such strength. It opens an information panel that displays a special strength scale that gradually decreases over time. And the spider monster turns his back on the young hero and says he won't waste his time on him. However, Shi Xiao will not give up so easily and surrounds himself and the monster with a fire barrier that is impossible to pass through. Xiao leans on his leg and declares loudly to destroy the monster that dared to attack his family. The spider monster looks at the young hero with horror in his eyes and cannot believe that the young man has so much power. At that moment, a special rescue team appears and heads towards the monster. The young hero tries to warn the rescue party of the danger, but no one wants to listen to him. After a while, the squad completely surrounds the dangerous monster and prepares to attack together. The wizards prepare their spells, and the warriors prepare to repel all the monster's attacks. The monster stares intently with its bloodshot eyes at the humans and has no doubts about its victory. At that moment, a spider web appears from the ground, binding all the squad members. The spider monster slowly heads towards the bound people to absorb their life force. In a matter of seconds, people turn into empty shells, and all their power goes into the monster's clutches. After that, the spider monster is colored in green light, increasing its characteristics several times. It's heading towards the young hero to send him to the other side of the world in one fell swoop. However, the young hero manages to put his flaming sword in front of him in time. He defends himself from the monster's deadly attack. But his strength quickly diminishes, and he receives multiple attacks from the spider, which make him cry out in pain. And then the young hero falls to the ground. He can barely breathe, and his strength is almost completely drained. However, he is determined and slowly gets up from the ground to continue the battle with the monster. After that, his body lights up with bright flames, and he prepares to deliver a fatal blow to deal with the monster. Shi Xiao swings his sword, and a bright swirl of flame sweeps across the entire battlefield, completely enveloping the body of the spider monster. After that, the spider monster suffers massive damage and burns in the young hero's bright flames. The young hero barely stands on his feet and silently watches as many items and rewards from the monster fall near his feet. Suddenly, he falls to the ground because he can no longer stand on his feet and his strength is fading. However, Shishao stretches his arm forward and tries to collect the rewards from the monster in hopes that the treasure can save his life. After a while, the young hero's eyes close, but a massive healing power completely envelops his body. After a while, Shishao finds himself in a strange room and is amazed to see the planets circling around him. Suddenly, a strange red armor appears in front of him, and a strange voice informs him that the Emperor's account is in front of him. Then, before the young hero appears, many accounts have monstrous powers. Xiao watches this with her mouth open in amazement and listens to the strange voice explaining how to activate the accounts. The young hero then comes to his senses and slowly walks over to the red armor to examine it closely. After a while, he grabs his head with his hand and tries to think about all the information he has recently received. Suddenly, Shishao's face lights up with a smile because he realizes he now possesses incredible strength. After a while, an information panel with his characteristics and abilities appears before him. At this point, the young hero folds his arms across his chest and remarks that opening new accounts requires a lot of experience. As soon as the hero spends experience points to open a new account, he is enveloped by magical threads and empowered. However, afterward, Shishao looks at the information panel. She realizes he has had much experience, and his level hasn't changed. On the information panel, there is an icon of the young hero and his characteristics that have not changed after the fight with the monster. After a while, the hero wakes up in bed and looks around. He scratches the back of his head, realizes he's in a hospital room, and tries to figure out where his family is. At this moment, Shishao noticed that all of his wounds had healed, and there was no trace of the battle with the monster. Meanwhile, the young hero's sister talks to the doctor and resents the fact that the hospital requires a lot of money for treatment. The doctor closes his eyes and explains in a calm voice that a huge amount of money has been spent on treating the young hero's family. He glares menacingly at the young hero's sister. He notes that unless an expensive antidote is administered, the lives of her brother and father may be in danger. At this moment, tears suddenly appear on Feifei's face and she starts coughing loudly. Her mom, along with her doctor, asked Feifei not to worry too much and to try to recover from the fight. Suddenly, the sound of a door opening in the hallway is heard, and the doctor, Feifei, and her mother turn toward the sound. At that moment, they see a young hero in the corridor who stands firmly on his feet and promises to find money to treat his family. He then approaches his sister and asks her not to worry about the water money because he will solve the problem. Meanwhile, the doctor looks at the young hero with astonishment and does not understand how the young man could cure himself of the deadly poison. After a while, Shishao approaches the doctor and asks how much money it will take to treat his family. When he finds out about the price, he quickly shakes the doctor's hand, asks him to start treatment, and promises that he will get the necessary amount of money in an hour. Then, the hero goes outside, sits on a bench, and examines his inventory with the help of the information panel. He finds in his inventory a demonic crystal that could be worth a fortune. And then, the young hero quickly throws on his cloak and heads into the city's narrow streets to find the black market. He descends a narrow staircase and notices two thugs guarding a strange iron door. The black market guards look at the young hero with surprise and do not understand what the boy forgot in this place. After a moment, Shishao looks up and asks the ambassadors to let him inside the black market. One of the ambassadors laughs at him and asks the young hero to leave the place as soon as possible. However, Shishao insists that he has an expensive artifact that anyone on the black market might be interested in. At that moment, another thug loses patience. He grabs the young hero by his cloak and demands that he get out of here. But at that moment, a strange old man accompanied by his guards appears in the doorway and asks the ambles to take their time. He stares intently at Shishao from the second floor and asks him to show him the item he wants to sell. After that, the young hero abruptly removes his cloak and shows the old man a small red demonic crystal. At this moment, the demonic crystal glows brightly in the young hero's hand. It emits a strange magical aura around it. Meanwhile, the old man scrutinizes the strange crystal and asks the young hero to enter the black market. As soon as Shishao opens the doors in front of him, he sees a huge room. In the center is the main hall with information signs. He slowly looked around and was amazed at how huge a room was hidden in such a small building. At this moment, Shishao is noticed by a beautiful waitress who winks and smiles at him. But the hero tries to ignore it and turns his head from side to side, trying to find the old man. Suddenly, he is stopped by two mercenaries who say that the young hero has no place here. However, one of the old man's bodyguards comes to the aid of Shishao, who demands the mercenaries take their hands off the young hero. After a while, the young hero is brought to a separate room, where the old man offers him a seat next to him to discuss the sale of the crystal. As soon as the hero sits down, the old man turns to him and offers him a not particularly large sum for his purchase. However, Shishao folds his hands in front of him and smiles, saying that this crystal is worth much more than the old man offers. At this point, the old man frowns and notices that the young hero is quite skilled. He offers 100,000 gold for the item. But the young hero rises for his dream and notes that the old man is offering a very low price for the goods and is about to leave. However, the old man's bodyguards block the passage to the door and will not let Shishao out of the room. And the old man then strokes his beard and notes that the young hero cannot refuse his offer. At this moment, Shishao freezes in place and stares intently at the bodyguards. He does not know what to do in such a situation. Meanwhile, the old man throws a stack of bills for 100,000 on the table and suggests that the hero agrees to his offer as soon as possible. Shao slowly turns around and looks at the stack of bills with a frightened expression, but does not dare to take them. After a few minutes, the room's doors open slightly, and the guards noticed a tall man standing in the doorway. A strange masked man wraps his hands around the faces of the bodyguards and demands they get out of his way. He is followed by a girl who walks in and smiles as she looks around at all the people in the room. The old man smiles slightly and greets the girl he calls the head of the Mo clan without a hint of hesitation. Mrs. Mo also welcomes the old man and notes that he is acting against all black market rules. After these words, the old man tenses up and silently looks at Mrs. Mo, interested in her next actions. The girl turns toward the young hero without a doubt and offers him 300 coins for his item, much to his surprise. Mrs. Mo smiles and notes that she likes Shishao very much, but the young hero can't reply because he's confused. Meanwhile, the old man stands up in surprise and notes that Mrs. Mo had quoted a price for this item that was too high. Mrs. Mo Lee only smiles wryly and suggests that the old man spend his money to restore his clan's reputation. After these words, the old man quickly leaves the room, his face irritated, and the girl smiles and waves goodbye. At this moment, the young hero scrutinizes the girl and notices a clear power struggle between the Mo clan and Huang Zheng. Before the girl leaves, he gives her the demonic crystal, but Mrs. Mo refuses and offers the hero to keep the object for himself. Then Mrs. Mo abruptly turns around and, with disdain in her eyes, explains to the hero that she only wants to mess with the Huang Zheng clan. She immediately leaves and asks her loyal bodyguard to give Shishao the money she promised him. The young hero smilingly looks towards the departing girl and notices that she has a fascinating character. Meanwhile, the young hero's whole family stands by the bed where the head of the family is lying and is worried about his condition. Suddenly, the director of the center bursts into the room and, with a loud shout, remarks that there is no place for those who cannot pay for treatment. Then he grabs the doctor's clothes and asks why a family that can't pay for treatment is still in that room. The doctor explains that one of the family members will soon return with the full amount to pay the hospital's expenses. But this answer does not satisfy the director, who slaps the doctor in the face with all his might. He then heads toward the hospital bed and tells Fei that she and her family need to get out of there. She reaches her hand toward the face of the family head to remove the mask that allows him to breathe. At that moment, Fei tries to interfere, but with anger in his eyes, the principal slaps her face and tells her to stay out of his way. At the same moment, the young hero kicks the door of the ward with all his might, and the center's director turns his gaze on him in surprise. The young hero looks angry and promises to hold the center's director accountable for punching his sister in the face. However, the center director becomes even more furious. He grabs Shishao by his clothes and points out that he is defacing the hospital's property. At that moment, the young hero's eyes glared at the principal with even more fury, and his body was covered in fire. After that, the headmaster's hand is covered with a strange bright glow and catches fire, causing him terrible pain. The director quickly ran out of the chamber and hoped to find a place to extinguish his hand, which Shishao had set on fire. And the young hero apologizes to the doctor for the inconvenience. He hands him the full amount to pay for the treatment. He looks at the doctor carefully and asks him to do everything possible to save his family. The doctor smiles and is happy someone dares to fight back against the center's director. After a moment, a credit card appears in Shishao's hand, and he says he's willing to pay to repair the door he kicked in anger. Then he thanks the doctor and heads to his sister's house to see how she's feeling after what happened. At this moment, Fei is shivering and trying to recover. She apologizes to her brother for being too weak to protect the family. However, the young hero strokes his sister on the head, asks her not to worry, and promises that he will do everything for the family. Tears appear on Feifei's face as she talks about not being able to go to the school tournament to pay for her treatment. At this moment, Shishao smiles widely, holding her sister by the shoulders, and says that he can perform in her place and earn money. The young hero is filled with confidence. He smiles broadly and is confident that he can win the grand prize. A few hours later, a large crowd gathers in the square in front of the school, ready to participate in the main competition. The headmaster is in the center of the room and tells the students that Mrs. Mo, who is standing next to him, will be their sponsor. All the students are thrilled by Miss Mo's appearance and hope that they will win solid prizes for participating in the competition. The young hero stands in the middle of the crowd and listens attentively to the principal's explanation of the contest's rules. Behind Mrs. Mo, a huge information panel appears and depicts the various locations of the dungeon. One of the locations shows a creature that looks like a living tree with red eyes. And the young hero decides to destroy this monster at any cost, thanks to his new power. At that moment, the principal asked his students to be careful not to go one-on-one against such a dangerous opponent. And the disciples rejoice when they learn that they don't have to fight such a dangerous creature. Meanwhile, the young hero considers the director's words and assumes that during the assignment, everyone will be divided into teams. Suddenly, the students look toward the principal with a surprised and disgruntled look when the principal talks about teamwork being necessary. The principal thanked the students for their questions and explained that each team would have different points to take away from each other. He then shows a massive map of the dungeon with red dots marking the locations of the monsters. Suddenly, a sly smile appears on the principal's face, and he points out that the students will have to fight each other to get a high score. At that moment, all the students looked at the principal with their mouths open in surprise and remarked that this was too cruel. But the headmaster doesn't listen to his students, and in a second, a huge portal opens behind him, leading to the dungeon where the test will take place. Meanwhile, the students' attention is on the young hero because he is at the lowest level among all the participants. Xiao ignores the prying eyes and heads to the teacher's office to sign up for the competition. At this point, the teacher turns around, corrects her glasses, and then scrutinizes the young hero. She is surprised to notice that the young hero's level is extremely low and offers to join a group. At this second, the bully Luo Feng appears behind Shi Xiao's back and looks at the young hero with a wide smile. Along with his friends, he points out that the young hero should bow down to him and ask for his protection. Luo Feng then smiles evilly and points out that if Shi Xiao obeys, he may take him into his squad. He then grabs the young hero by the shoulder and suggests he start howling and whining like a dog. However, Shi Xiao outplays the bully and using clever phrases turns the situation in his favor. Luo Feng notices it at the last moment and realizes that the hero has made a fool of him in front of his friends. So he becomes enraged and threatens Shi Xiao with all his might for insulting him in front of his friends. However, the teacher quickly stops the fight before it starts and points out to Luo Feng that he should go to the competition. And Luo Feng unhappily clucked and promised to take revenge on the young hero while passing the test. He walks towards the magic gate but periodically looks back at the young hero. Finally, the bully disappears from the young hero's sight, and the teacher warns that Shi Xiao should join the team for safety's sake. However, the young hero refuses, and the teacher sighs heavily, holding a pass to allow him into the testing area. And the young hero sets off towards the magic gate with complete confidence that he will take first place in the competition. At this moment, Madame Mo, along with her bodyguards, are carefully observing Shi Xiao's actions. Mrs. Mo smiles playfully when she remembers that she has met the young hero before and notes that he is a fascinating young man. Then she folds her arms across her chest and hopes the young hero will show an interesting result during the contest. A few minutes later, the young hero finds himself in the test area and sees huge mountaintops and a long river before him. After teleporting, he takes a breath, and the magic gate behind him slowly closes. And he's racing through the forest in a few seconds, hoping to find as many monsters as possible to earn points. He cold-bloodedly destroys small monsters that pose no threat to him. However, several monsters try to escape from him, so he sets off in pursuit of them to finish the remaining ones. But watching them closely, he realizes all the spiders are heading towards a particular place through the bushes. He then decides to follow them in hopes of finding the Spider Queen and obtaining valuable items for her. However, he soon realizes that he has entered a dangerous part of the forest, but continues his movement into its depths. After a few minutes, he discovers a huge tree on which a red web is attached, along with a girl who is trapped in it. The girl crawls and tries to get out, but the spider's web binds her arms and legs and prevents her from moving. Despite this, she is spinning in her web repeatedly and trying to call for help. At that moment, a young hero appears in the tree, heads towards the web, and promises the girl that he will save her. The girl looks at the young hero with surprise and asks him to run away from her as fast as possible because his level is very low. She has tears in her eyes because of fear, but she still asks to stay here because she worries about Xiao's life. However, the young hero doesn't listen to her and scrutinizes the red web to determine how to destroy it. Then, the girl turns to the young hero loudly and points out that the queen is level 8 and will easily destroy the hero. But this thought only excites the young hero, and his hand ignites with a bright yellow flame. And after a while, all the red cobwebs that bound the girl in the blink of an eye turn to dust. Xiao's whole body lights up with bright flames, and he asks the girl to run to her group as fast as possible. At the same instant, a red spider queen appears at the top of the tree and looks at the intruder displeased. The young hero notices the monster and freezes in place from fear, but the girl does not understand what is happening. A second later, acid rains down on them, but Xiao dodges in time and pushes the girl aside. However, the heroes immediately land in a spider web trap prepared for them. At this moment, Xiao realizes with horror and surprise that the web will soon completely immobilize them and tries to devise an escape plan. However, in a second, the web becomes a strong cocoon that securely entangles Xiao and the young girl. The girl tries to free herself and screams for help while the spider watches intently. At this point, the young hero asks the girl not to panic and looks around carefully to find a way out of the trap. Meanwhile, the heroes notice that the spider, for some reason, leisurely goes deep into the forest and leaves them. The girl tearfully rejoices at this coincidence and hopes the spider has changed its mind about eating them. But the young hero disappoints the girl and terrifies her when he tells her that the spider queen is sure to return. Then the girl starts twisting her head in all directions and screams loudly in fear with tears in her eyes. The young hero tries to calm her down, then grits his teeth and tries to free his hands. After a minute, however, he realizes the web is fresh and not strong enough and tries to chew through it with his teeth. He tries to get out, but the girl dreams of something else entirely. At this point, he looks at her unhappily and demands that she help him bite through the cobwebs too. The hero begins to chew the cobwebs together in hopes of getting out of this trap, and silence looms between them. After a few minutes, they are freed from the web, and the girl cries with happiness, saying that she is unharmed. Suddenly, there is a loud rustle in the forest, and the heroes realize that the queen of spiders is heading their way. Then, the young hero covers the girl with his body and asks her to escape from this dangerous thicket as quickly as possible. But the girl grabs Xiao by the shoulder and asks him to run away with her as quickly as possible, or he will go to the other world. However, the young hero's face flashes only a wide smile, and a second later he says that he is eager to meet the monster. A bright flame lights up in his hand, and he tells the girl that he will defeat the Spider Queen, even alone. The Spider Queen rushes to attack Xiao and his girlfriend at this second. Still, the hero puts up a firewall before him for protection. Then he quickly turns toward the girl and asks her to leave the battlefield. But Huantian says he has healing magic and will help the young hero in battle if needed. Ignoring the girl's words, the hero heads towards the giant spider to deal with it. And the spider oversees him and prepares to fend off the young hero's attack. Suddenly, Xiao's body starts to be enveloped by huge swirls of flames, and a fiery blade appears in his hands. He quickly jumps up as the giant spider attacks and prepares for its deadly move. As soon as the young hero waits for the right moment, he rushes at the monster with a loud scream and holds his blade with two hands. In a split second, the spider's entire body is struck by a huge sweat of flame, and with his sword, Xiao cuts its body into two equal parts. Soon, the giant spider's entire body turns to ash, and the girl watches silently in amazement at what is happening before her. Her eyes widened with delight, and she said she hadn't expected such a powerful outburst from the young hero. Meanwhile, Xiao concentrates the rest of the flame in his hand and carefully searches for valuable items. Ruan Tian admires the young hero's immense strength with adoration. Then she stood proudly on the rock and rejoiced in having gained valuable experience without making any effort. As soon as the hero is about to leave, she quickly follows him, snuggling up to him with her body and asking more about his power. However, Xiao is not particularly happy with the situation and demands that the girl stop bothering him. He squats down to collect magical items and points out that all loot belongs to him alone. Then, he scrutinizes the red claw that fell out as a reward for defeating the giant spider. Suddenly, the red claw in his hands began to glow brightly and transform into another object. Amazingly, the young hero watches this process and realizes the item is more useful. He quickly digs through his inventory and uses the information panel to discover that his magic ring improves other items. Xiao ponders the situation with a smile on his face, while Ruan Tian does not move a step away from him. Then the girl turns to him and talks about how she could never have guessed that the hero was hiding his true power. Xiao abruptly yanks his arm to the side and asks the girl to stop pestering him. Then she stares intently into her eyes and warns that Ruan Tian will be very sorry if she tells anyone about his secret. However, after the young hero's words, the girl is not frightened and, on the contrary, wants to hug Xiao even more. At this moment, the voice of several people behind the heroes can be heard greeting Xiao and his companion. The strangers turn out to be a small group that, a few hours earlier, thrown Zhuan Tian into the river to be eaten by a giant spider. Ruan Tian points her finger at the gang leader and accuses him of abandoning her to her fate. The gang leader looks at her with a mocking smile and says that the girl is not capable of anything. A little later, he notices that someone has roasted the spider his team was hunting, which shocks him. The squad leader turns to Huan Tian and his men and asks what happened to the Spider Queen. Then Ruan Tian tries to hug Xiao and says that the young hero disposed of the dangerous monster. However, the squad leader and his friends do not believe Xiao can cope with the monster and just laugh at him. This situation makes Ruan Tian furious, and her eyes fill with tears because of the offense. Meanwhile, the team scrutinizes the giant spider's body and tries to determine how it was destroyed. The young hero and Ruan Tian are standing on the other side, waiting for the squad to act. Suddenly, an information window appears in front of Ruan Tian, informing her that the squad leader is inviting her to join him. However, the girl says she won't fall for such a trick again and announces loudly that she won't be joining the squad. Then, the squad members point out that no one needs Ruan Tian, and it is better for her to be part of their team than to be left alone. After these words, the girl is furious and promises that she will never be part of their squad. At this moment, a loud roar is heard, and out of fright, the girl snuggles closer to Xiao and cries out in fear. And on the faces of the squad appears a smile because they heard the sound of a dangerous monster for which you can get many points. At this point, the young hero informs the squad without much emotion that this squad will not be able to handle the monster. The squad leader slowly turns around and demands that the young hero repeat his words again. At this moment, Xiao's face lit up with a gloating smile, and he called the commander's squad a bunch of weaklings. The young hero's words hurt the squad leader, but his men stopped him from taking rash action and asked him not to give in to provocations. After that, the squad goes into the thicket of the forest, and the squad leader promises that he will take revenge on the young hero for the words he said. As soon as the detachment disappears in the thicket of the forest, the girl looks at the young hero with grateful eyes and offers to go on the road. However, the hero goes in the direction where the squad of men went, and Ruan Tian does not understand what Xiao is up to. The young hero turns around with a smile on his face and explains that they are going on a hunt for a dangerous monster. At that moment, the roar of the dangerous monster echoed throughout the forest. Meanwhile, the wounded creature runs across the plain from danger and tries to find a hiding place. However, the Tyrannosaurus quickly grabs the creature with its head and completely devours it. The Tyrannosaurus then stands up to its full height and lets out a loud roar that extends for hundreds of kilometers. And at this moment, he's being ambushed by a squad of men ready to pounce on him at the first opportunity. One of the squad members is a little shaken with fear and suggests to his commanding officer that he find another target to attack. But the commander is only annoyed by his comrade's cowardice and demands that he forget those thoughts. Then he clenches his fist tightly and promises his team they will defeat this monster without much trouble. At that moment, he imagines himself on a golden throne, with Ruan Tian sitting beside him and Xiao at his feet, apologizing for his impertinence. He anticipates the moment of imminent victory, and his face takes on an eerie expression. And after a few minutes at the head of his team, he rushes towards the mighty Tyrannosaurus to defeat it. A few meters away from the monster, one of the team stops and notices that something is wrong with the beast. At this moment, the Tyrannosaurus turns its attention to the human team and looks at them menacingly. He gathers people with the help of his tail, and the team tries to run away and dodge the attack at that moment. However, it's getting too late for the squad, and a powerful tail kick catches up with everyone. Then, the monster breathes out hellfire and destroys the remaining humans lucky enough to survive the last attack. The commander, with fear in his eyes, looks at what is happening and realizes that he is the only one left on his team. He quickly turns around and tries to escape the giant monster chasing him. The squad leader closely monitors the Tyrannosaurus's actions and tries to avoid being hit by its new attacks. Meanwhile, the young hero and Ruan Tian walk through the forest and hear a familiar voice from far away. Ruan Tian notice the squad leader running towards them with a gloating smile. At that moment, the squad leader decides to unleash the Tyrannosaurus on the young hero, and Ruan Tian heads in their direction. Then the young hero raises his fists and says he is ready to fight the squad leader if he wants to. But the commander abruptly changes direction and finds himself behind the girl's back with a wide grin. Then he sharply pushes Ruan Tian towards the monster and wishes her good luck fighting it. The girl, with resentment in her eyes, looks at the commander and does not understand why he decided to do this to her. However, a second later, she hears a loud roar behind her and realizes a dangerous monster is nearby. The girl turns around and sees the massive mouth of a Tyrannosaurus quickly heading in her direction. From fright, the girl stretches her arms forward and aims a small magical projectile at the monster, which does almost no damage. Then the monster looks at her menacingly, and the girl, with tears in her eyes, very quickly runs to Shishao and asks for his help. At this moment, the squad leader stands behind the young hero's back and laughs at the whole situation. Then he smiles broadly, wishes the heroes good luck, and then turns into smoke that dissolves into thin air. The young hero stands serenely still and slowly looks around for the squad leader. Despite the fact that the latter has completely disappeared, he grabs him with his hand and talks about not allowing him to leave the battlefield. The young hero stares at the squad leader and says such tricks won't work for him. At this moment, the squad leader is clenching his teeth tightly and trying to figure out how Shishao was able to detect him. He slowly begins to choke and tries to devise a plan to free himself from the young hero's grasp. In this second, he realizes that the young hero has a special vision and offers to destroy the dangerous monster together. However, the young hero only smiles and says he does not need the help of such a weakling as the squad leader. After that, Shishao released the squad leader's throat and hit the ground with all his might, causing it to split into several pieces. Huge streams of fire completely surround the dangerous monster, and Zhuan Tian rushes towards the young hero with all his legs. At this moment, the squad leader watches in amazement and can't believe that Shishao has tremendous strength. He sits on his knees and asks him to join forces against the monster. In exchange, he promises to give the hero all the magical items. The young hero only looks at the squad leader with a gloating smile and offers his companion to decide his fate. The squad leader bows his head and begs Ruan Tian to forgive him for all the dirty deeds he has done. However, the girl does not pay attention to the squad leader's pleas and only admires the young hero's strength. Then she turns toward the squad leader and talks about how she'll never forgive him for what she's done. Suddenly, there is a loud roar, and with a sound wave, the Tyrannosaurus is freed from the fire trap. Zhuan Tian is surprised to see that the monster has escaped the trap, and Shishao turns towards it and prepares to fight. However, at this moment, the squad leader pulls out a dagger from behind his back and looks at his assailants with a predatory smile. He quickly runs towards them and hopes to strike from behind while the giant monster distracts the heroes. However, the young hero quickly creates a flaming sword in his hands, fends off the dagger attack, and then looks at the squad leader with anger. After that, he immediately stabs him with his flaming sword, and the squad leader screams in pain. With a slight smile, the hero looks at his opponent and says that such a weakling does not belong in this dungeon. The squad leader clings tightly to his wound and clenches his teeth, saying that he will definitely take revenge on Shishao. Once the squad leader disappears, the young hero scrutinizes his belongings for valuable items. However, a Tyrannosaurus appears behind Shishao, and the young hero immediately forgets to find valuable items. He abruptly creates a flaming sword in his hands and blocks the monster's attack at the last moment. But the Tyrannosaurus has monstrous strength and throws the young hero off without much trouble. However, Shishao is not going to give up. Around him, fire whirlwinds in the shape of dragons appear and are headed toward the monster. Once the whirlwinds reach the Tyrannosaurus's body, they deal massive damage and make the monster roar with rage. The young hero silently watches the monster and contemplates a plan to defeat this deadly creature. After that, he makes a quick dash, and his entire body is covered in bright flames. Shishao crashes into the Tyrannosaurus's body at full speed, pushing it back a few meters. As the monster tries to reach its senses, it turns to Zhuan Tian and asks him to use a pacification spell on the beast. But the monster quickly rises and spews out flames, which the hero reduces to nothing with the help of his magic shield. Ruan Tian tries to hide behind a tree and tells Shishao that her magic might not work on such a dangerous opponent. Meanwhile, the hero dodges the monster's blow and jumps up to command the girl to start creating a spell. Once again, his fiery blade strikes a fatal blow at the monster. Ruin Tian watches in amazement and once again marvels at the strength of the young hero. However, the monster continues the fight and tries to hit the young hero with his massive tail. But Shishao anticipated this outcome of events and blocked this punch with one hand. He then grabs the Tyrannosaur's tail with both hands and stares at his opponent with an eerie look. He sharply raises the monster above his head and moments later topples it to the ground with all his might. After the strike, the young hero turns to Huan Tian and asks her to use her spell. The girl begins to perform a strange dance, twirling her staff around herself, and then sends an air kiss in the direction of the monster. At this moment, a huge purple heart appears above the monster's head, and he rushes toward it quickly. The young hero then turns to the girl with a disgruntled look and asks if she is sure she used the right spell. However, after a minute, the heroes notice that a cute little dinosaur has appeared in place of the huge Tyrannosaurus. The young hero will destroy him. However, Ruan Tian asks him not to make a hasty decision and tries to dissuade him. The girl quickly runs up to the cub and, wrapping her arms around it, asks Shishao to spare the poor creature. She gently strokes the little dinosaur's head and tells the young hero that this animal could be a valuable ally for them. However, Shao painted only a gloating smile on Shi's face and said that he would now send the girl along with the dinosaur to the other world. At this moment, goosebumps run down Zhuang Tian's back because she fears the young hero and doesn't know what to do in such a situation. But without thinking long, she puts the little dinosaur forward and tells Shishao that he can do whatever he wants with it. The girl puts it on the ground and the little dinosaur doesn't realize what's going on and licks its snout. However, the cute expression on the dinosaur's face has no effect on Shishao. With his sword's help, he sends him to the other world. Then calmly, he looks at Ruan Tian and says that appearances can be deceiving. And the girl sits on her knees and cries loudly because she feels sorry for the little dinosaur. But she quickly comes to her senses when, with the help of a dashboard, she learns that she's gotten a lot of experience. At this point, the young hero also opens the information panel, and to his surprise, he notices that he received a lot of experience as a reward for the monster. He quickly teleports to his pocket dimension and looks around for Lord accounts. After a while, several accounts of the Lord appear before him where only one is available. Without thinking long, he folds his hands before him and pumps up his existing account to get a new ability. In front of him appears a huge eye, and the information panel informs the hero that he can watch the opponents with it. The young hero is pleased about this news because he can now track down an ancient tree in the forest depths. Ruan Tian quickly distracts him from his thoughts and points somewhere forward, saying there are still valuable items left from the monster. After walking a few meters, the heroes see in front of them a huge golden beam coming from a small object. Looking at it, they realize they have a rare dinosaur egg in front of them. At this moment, Ruan Tian approaches the egg and joyfully announces that a dinosaur could hatch from it. Because of these words, the young hero indulges in his fantasies and imagines riding a mighty dinosaur. However, Ruan Tian distracts the hero from his musings and asks if she is helpful to him while going through the dungeon. However, the young hero does not understand the meaning of this phrase and tells the girl that he will not give her this rare egg. Meanwhile, Mrs. Mo and her bodyguards are observing what's going on with the help of a magic panel. Then she turns to one of her bodyguards and demands that the headmaster be brought to her immediately. The girl then closes the information panel and tries to understand why the young hero hides his real level. A few minutes later, the headmaster enters her private room to greet Mrs. Mo. The girl ignores the director's benevolence and asks what he knows about Shishao. She is greatly surprised when the director tells her that the young hero has never leveled up since his admission. The headmaster coughs slightly and says that the young hero initially seemed to be a very capable student, but now he is not so sure. Then Mrs. Mo asks the headmaster to check the leaders in the dungeon using the dashboard. The headmaster is greatly surprised when he sees Shishao on the list of leaders in overall score. Miss Mo smiles slyly and asks the principal to announce the list of the competition's main leaders to the participants. However, the director is amazed by such a request and points out that such an approach can make it difficult to pass the dungeon. However, Miss Mo ignores this and points out that it is imperative if the participants want to excel in the future. The principal only sighs heavily and then opens the information panel to fulfill Mrs. Mo's request. Meanwhile, deep in the thicket of the forest, one of the squad leaders crawls through the grass and tries to escape his abusers. He is approached by Luo Feng, who stands at the head of the squad and taunts the wounded commander. Then he abruptly steps on his body with his foot, causing a hell of a lot of pain, and the commander's body quickly disappears from his sight. He looks around while his companion rejoices that both units are under Luo Feng's leadership. However, Luo Feng himself is not happy about this coincidence and would like to experience this dungeon personally. Suddenly, an information panel opens in front of him, showing the squads leading in points. The same panels appear in front of the other squad members, and everyone scrutinizes the number of points they have made. Luo Feng and his team are shocked when they see the leader, Shi Xiao, ranked third. Luo Feng is highly impressed by this turn of events, and hopes he can fight the young hero in person. Then he raises his battle axe upwards and bids the squad to move towards Shi Xiao's location. He opens the interactive map and points out that the young hero is not far from his squad. Meanwhile, the other squad leader runs through the forest and occasionally looks back, hoping his pursuer has fallen behind. However, suddenly a loud explosion sounds near him, and from its force, he falls to the ground but manages to cover his face with his hands. He crawls forward and notices a bright flame burning behind him and his pursuer a few meters away. The squad leader tries to escape, but a vortex of bright flames completely surrounds him, cutting off his escape route. Cold sweat streamed down his face, and he looked back in horror at the young hero and Zhuang Tian, who were heading toward him. The young hero stops a few meters away from him and asks to share information about the last boss. The squad leader is about to attack Shi Xiao, but the latter has no problem deflecting his lunge. And then he snaps his fingers, and the commander's entire body catches fire, and he screams in pain. Ruan Tian once again admires the hero's strength, and Shi Xiao is disappointed to note that the squad leader had no valuables with him. Then he scratches his beard and remarks that Ruan Tian is a valuable and helpful companion. After these words, the girl wants to hug the young hero, but he pulls away and asks Ruan Tian to cool down a bit. But the girl is already immersed in her thoughts. She imagines in her head how she holds a golden goblet in her hand, and how all the students call her a goddess. The young hero watches Zhuang Tian with a misunderstood expression and asks her not to wallow in her dreams. Then he opens the dashboard and tries to determine where the other teams are. At this moment, Ruan Tian is distracted and notices that Luo Feng's team is far from them. Then a smile appears on the young hero's face, and he talks about how Luo Feng's team is most likely watching him closely. After that, Shi Xiao heads into the thicket of the forest, and Ruan Tian indicates in a disgruntled voice to attack Luo Feng's team. The heroes head forward, and the girl notices that the shadow tree hides very well in the forest and will be hard to find. In response to these words, the young hero smiles and notes that the girl is much more intelligent than he first thought. Then he scratches the back of his head and decides to use his new ability to find the final boss. And a second later, a blazing eye appears in the sky, scrutinizing the surroundings in search of the monster. The blazing eye gradually grows taller and informs the young hero of all the teams and monsters that dwell in the forest's thicket. After that, waves of fire swirl around the young hero while he watches closely. A second later, a trail of fire guides Shi Xiao toward where the last boss of this dungeon is. The young hero is happy that he has such a unique ability and is confident he can defeat the last boss. Then he rushes forward quickly, but Ruan Tian doesn't understand what's happening. He asks Shi Xiao to wait for a while. Meanwhile, Luo Feng's team is in the bushes, waiting for the right moment to attack the young hero. Luo Feng is furious that the young hero has already destroyed several teams and doesn't understand why Shi Xiao is so strong. He can't stand it and heads towards the young hero, and his team follows him. Suddenly, one of his comrades reports that Shi Xiao has somehow disappeared from the radar and is not visible on the general map. Then Luo Feng opens the information console and is furious when he realizes that the young hero has disappeared from his sight. Then he closes the information panel and, in a loud voice, orders to find Ruan Tian, who should be together with Shi Xiao. Meanwhile, Ruan Tian walks proudly alone through the thicket of the forest and doesn't understand why the young hero has decided to use her as bait. She's worried about her safety and is constantly looking around for danger. Suddenly, Luo Feng appears in front of her along with his team and looks at her with an evil expression. Then Ruan Tian, in a troubled voice, says she doesn't know where Shi Xiao is and asks her to leave her alone. However, this answer does not satisfy Luo Feng, who demands that the girl immediately tell him where the young hero is now. Then he puts his axe to Zhuang Tian's chest and indicates that he will send the girl to the other world if she does not give an answer. At this moment, a loud creaking sound is heard, and a massive shadow of a hand falls on Luo Feng's entire squad. A second later, a huge wooden arm comes down on the part of the squad and strikes hard at those who fail to dodge. Luo Feng's entire team turns back and sees behind them the monstrous tree that is the dungeon's final boss. Everyone is terrified looking at this monster and does not know what to do in this situation. They are sure that they will lose to him in the battle. However, Luo Feng rushes first into battle and orders his squad to gather their strength and give battle to the monster. On his forehead protrude veins of anger, and in his eyes, you can see a massive thirst for victory over a dangerous opponent. Luo Feng delivers a swift strike with his axe and frees his friends from the path of the dark tree. At this moment, the dark tree lets out a loud roar and prepares for its next attack. Luo Feng stands proudly before his comrades and orders them to use their magic to battle the monster. At this moment, the dark tree strikes, but Luo Feng blocks this deadly attack with the help of his shield. His allies heal him, and small fireballs appear behind him, heading towards the dark tree. The wizards, along with Luo Feng, continue to attack the dark tree, making it scream in pain and take a huge amount of damage. Meanwhile, Ruan Tian watches the battle and is amazed that Luo Feng was able to recruit a well-coordinated team. At this point, the fireballs continue to reach the dark tree's body and cause critical fire damage. The squad's faces smile, and Luo Feng urges his friends not to stop for a second. Then he strikes a powerful blow with his axe, and his mind fills with the belief that he and his team can defeat the monster. However, the tree is suddenly covered by a strange metallic sheath that Luo Feng cannot penetrate. Under the feet of the dark tree, green lines appear that diverge in different directions all over the ground. The ground begins to crack beneath their feet, and people watch in fear to see what happens next. A moment later, huge rifts appear in the ground, and a strange green energy oozes. And the dark tree, with its green eyes, scrutinizes the people and loudly cries. After that, strange creatures resembling walking trees appear from the crevices and surround Luo Feng's squad. However, Luo Feng does not lose hope and rushes at the first enemy that gets in his way. But when he turns back, he notices that most of his squad is scattering in different directions to escape. Meanwhile, one of the monsters grabs Ruan Tian with its vines, and the girl calls the young hero for help. In a second, Shi Shao comes to the rescue. With his jerk, he strikes the monster a powerful blow and frees the girl from his grasp. He then catches the girl in his arms, smiles, and apologizes for having to be bait for a while. But Ruan Tian is not upset by the young hero's actions and tearfully rejoices that she was able to be useful to him. The young hero only smiles and indicates that he will not offend those on his team. Meanwhile, Luo Feng furiously swings his axe and fights off many reanimated trees. The young hero taunts him and points out that he can defeat all monsters alone. However, Luo Feng is unwilling to listen to the young hero's words and points out that Shi Shao is weak. The young hero, with a smile on his face, continues to watch the battle from the sidelines and talks about demonstrating his strength. After that, he creates fire magic in his hand and sends one of Luo Feng's squad members to the other world. Luo Feng is furious at the young hero's behavior and says that only a coward would do such a thing amid battle. And the young hero only scoffs and says that no one in this arena is equal to his strength. At this moment, Luo Feng rushed towards the young hero with a loud shout and was about to deliver the most powerful blow. However, Shi Shao reflects Luo Feng's attack without much trouble and uses fire magic to flip him aside. Luo Feng flew to the ground quickly and his axe flew in the other direction. But Luo Feng will not give up. He quickly rises to his feet and says that if Shi Shao does not team up with him, no one will stop the monster. However, the young hero is confident in his abilities. He crosses his arms before him, declaring that he will destroy everyone here. After that, a giant fire petal appears, and many fire arrows fly towards his enemies. The young hero laughs loudly and tells Luo Feng to spare him so he can see his true strength. After a moment, fiery arrows sweep across the battle, attacking the living trees and the men of Luo Feng's squad. People try to hide, but the fiery arrows leave them no chance and send them to the other side of the world. The remaining trees try to reach the young hero, but the fire arrows destroy them. One of Luo Feng's squad members crawls to his commander and tearfully begs him to save him. Suddenly, the dark tree lets out a loud roar and starts sucking out all the power and the rebellious trees beside it. Small places appear in the body of the enormous tree, filled with a green glow. On the battlefield, only Luo Feng, Shi Shao, and Ruan Tian remained, and they were amazed by the monster's transformation. The tree is transformed and looks like a strange creature that burns with a bright green flame. Ruan Tian looks at the new form of the monster fearfully and worries that this opponent will be very hard to deal with. And the young hero stands still and scrutinizes what the horrible monster will do. In the blink of an eye, the dark tree is behind the young hero and is about to strike his back with its sharp daggers. However, the young hero turns around and says confidently that this attack is too slow for him. In the same instant, a fire sword appears in his hands and he blocks the dark tree's attack with no problem. However, the dark tree has destructive power and throws the young hero upward. The monster then assumes an attack stance and prepares to deliver the killing blow. And many green sharp needles are heading towards the young hero from his body. At this moment, Luo Feng bursts into loud laughter and says that Shi Xiao will go to the other world because of his pride. However, in the blink of an eye, all the sharp needles burn in a bright flame and the young hero looks unharmed. In a split second, he is behind the back of the dark tree, and with his hands in his pockets, he declares that this battle has ended. Several cuts immediately appear on the dark tree's back, but it turns around for its next strike. However, then the monster's entire body is enveloped in fire, and the young hero continues to walk forward with a confident step. After a minute, a magical portal appears in front of the heroes, and the public address system announces the contest's end. At this moment, Luo Feng falls on his knees before the young hero. He apologizes for his act and acknowledges Shi Xiao's strength. The young hero looks at Luo Feng seriously and talks about how he doesn't care about his words. Then he steps his foot on his chest and demands that he apologize again for all the words he said. Shi Xiao listens to Luo Feng in silence and then tells him not to come into his life anymore, even as a younger brother. At these words, Luo Feng becomes enraged and rushes at the young hero with the last of his strength, holding his axe in his hands. Ruan Tian is surprised by this turn of events and tells Luo Feng that this is a low act even for him. But Luo Feng has a wicked smile and says that he will take revenge on the young hero for his humiliation. After that, a massive puff of smoke appears in Luo Feng's place, completely hiding his silhouette. When the smoke clears, a broken magical figurine appears in Luo Feng's place. Luo Feng is near the magic gate and, smiling, says he beat the young hero this time. However, Shi Xiao becomes enraged and catches up to Luo Feng with a special fire strike. Luo Feng doesn't have time to say anything and disappears from this dungeon due to the injuries he received. Zhuang Tian rejoiced that the trial had ended and that she had scored a large number of points. The young hero talks about leaving the team, but Ruan Tian will not object. He thanks the young hero for his help. She hugs him and talks about how his actions will make her rich because of her earned points. Then, the heroes study magic items, and Shi Xiao discovers a magic crystal with healing powers. He gives it to Zhuang Tian and asks her to use it wisely, and the girl is greatly surprised by such a gift. A smile appears on her face, and she heartily thanks the young hero for such a valuable artifact. Xiao is slightly embarrassed by such a compliment and opens the information panel to leave the group. Suddenly, the ground beneath the feet of the young hero and Ruan Tian begins to shake, and the system reports that the dungeon is starting to collapse. The girl falls to her feet and, holding her head with her hands, screams loudly in fear and doesn't know what to do. The image from the monitors that follow the test begins to distort, and the system starts the countdown. But the young hero does not give in to panic. He helps Zhuang Tian stand up and they run to the exit together. Suddenly, Ruan Tian stumbles and falls to the ground. She tries to get up, but her leg hurts badly. The young hero asks the girl to go up as soon as possible, but Ruan Tian is scared and asks to leave her there. The girl starts crying loudly and says that for the young hero she is just a burden. However, Shi Xiao does not want to leave Zhuang Tian in distress. He takes her in his arms and runs towards the portal with her. He talks with a calm expression on his face about how he would never leave his friends in trouble. After saying those words with all his might, he threw Ruan Tian toward the portal before it closed. The girl pulls her hand out of the portal and asks the young hero to run as fast as possible toward her. Tears come to her because she fears that Shi Xiao might stay in this world forever. After a few seconds, the portal closes and Ruan Tian disappears. The young hero uses the scroll of return and doesn't understand why the girl is so anxious to save him. A bright beam teleports the young hero to the destroyed portal, and Shi Xiao looks around. He turns his head from side to side and doesn't understand where the rest of the contestants have gone. He then walks along the school corridor and notices Zhuang Tian crying loudly near the small lockers. Shi Xiao walks closer to her and, with a calm voice, asks why the girl is crying so loudly. Ruan Tian immediately calms down when she hears the familiar voice and looks at the young hero with surprise, not believing that he is standing before her. The young hero strokes the girl on the head and explains that he used the teleportation scroll to escape the dungeon. After that, Zhuang Tian hugged the young hero tightly and rejoiced that he was unharmed. She then quickly pulls away from him and apologizes for getting too close to him. Suddenly, near the young hero and his companion, a gang of mercenaries appears, who did not expect to see anyone in this place. The young hero stands before Huan Tian and asks what the mercenaries forgot inside the school. He looks closer at the mercenaries' suits and realizes they are not in good faith. Meanwhile, one of the mercenaries greedily licks his lips and talks about taking Huan Tian for himself. The girl hides behind the young hero's back and asks him to save her from this horrible man. Then, Xiao's face smiles and he advises the mercenaries to leave this place while they can. But the mercenaries don't listen to the young hero's words and rush towards him without a second thought. And the young hero stands in one place and waits for the right moment to attack. Suddenly, he makes a sudden leap and prepares to deliver his deadly blow to the enemy. In the blink of an eye, he cuts through the mercenaries' armor with his flaming sword and sends two of them to the other side. One of the surviving mercenaries looks at the young hero in fear and begs him to spare him. Xiao slowly headed in his direction and demanded answers to his questions. Then the young hero puts his hand up and says he will tell all in exchange for his life. He immediately drops all his items and money, hoping that Xiao will change his anger into mercy. The young hero presses his sword against the mercenary's shoulder and demands what his squad is doing here. Xiao is shocked when he learns that the mercenary squad is here to do the bidding of the Huangjung clan. The mercenary is breathing heavily because of the heat of the flames and talking about their main target, Mistress Mo, whom they must capture. After saying this, Xiao thinks deeply. She remembers that the Mo and Huangjung clans constantly fight for power amongst themselves. The mercenary thanks the young hero for keeping him alive, and Xiao notes that he now has valuable information. At this point, the mercenary pulls out a healing potion and tries to replenish his missing health. The young hero looks around and realizes that he will not be able to get out in the near future because of the magical barrier. Suddenly, the mercenary's body catches fire, and Xiao realizes that he didn't promise to keep him alive. The young hero then turns toward his girlfriend and asks her to find a safe place. He looks earnest and tells Huan Tian that he will save the school from the mercenary group. The girl is covered in blush after the words that Xiao said and promises to hide in a safe place. The young hero sets off towards the main hall of the school, and Huan Tian wishes him good luck and asks him to be very careful. After a few minutes, Xiao finds himself in the main hall. He looks very confident and intends to rescue Mrs. Mo. He hides behind a column from one of the mercenary patrols and decides to follow this unit. The young hero assumes the mercenaries will lead him right to where their boss is. After a while, Xiao opens the information panel and tries to figure out where the mercenaries are headed. The squad does not notice that someone is following them and moves leisurely in the direction where the hostages are. Meanwhile, in one of the classrooms of the school, a group of mercenaries have gathered together with their boss and are holding the students hostage. A bound teacher sits on a chair and asks the mercenaries to let her students go and not harm them. At this point, the mercenary commander is greedily licking himself and enjoying the teacher's complete immobilization. He grabs her face and talks about how the girl is now completely his. But the teacher becomes disgusted by these words, and she abruptly breaks out of his arms despite her condition. Meanwhile, the rest of the mercenaries observe the situation with a smile and ask their commander to provide the girl. At this moment, Luo Feng looks at the bound disciples with fury and silently curses them for being unable to do anything. Meanwhile, the mercenary commander rips off the teacher's clothes and taunts her caustically. But Luo Feng comes to her teacher's aid in time and pushes the mercenary commander aside despite being tied up. His face is filled with anger and disdain for the mercenary, and he's willing to do anything to protect the girl. However, the mercenary commander only taunts Luo Feng and then punches him in the stomach with all his might, causing him to let out a loud scream. After that, the mercenary commander scratches his beard, looks at Luo Feng, and notes that the young man is unusually brave. Luo Feng is on his knees trying to recover from the terrible blow he received from the commander. Suddenly, the mercenary commander throws a knife in front of Luo Feng's face and orders him to rise to his feet. He points towards Luo Feng's classmates and suggests that he send his former comrades to the other world. The disciples look at Luo Feng and the mercenaries in surprise and can't believe their ears. The mercenary commander slashes Luo Feng's hands with his knife and frees him from the tight ropes. Then he puts a knife in his hand and demands action as soon as possible before his patience runs out. And the teacher looks at Luo Feng with tears and worries about his fate. At this moment, Luo Feng clutched the knife with both hands and thought about what to do in such a situation. And despite all the danger, he throws himself a knife at the squad leader because he doesn't want to betray his friends. But the commander is of a high level, so he has no problem grabbing Luo Feng's hand as he clutches the dagger. He then looks at Luo Feng with a gloating smile, firmly holds his hand, and tells him that he will pay for his transgression. However, suddenly blood comes out of the mercenary commander's mouth. He loses his balance, and his dagger falls to the ground. Luo Feng looks at the mercenary commander with disdain and tries to understand what happened to him. The mercenary commander staggers for a while and then falls face down on the floor. but a strange dagger is sticking out of his back. Suddenly, a young hero whose body is covered in bright flames appears at the door and declares that he will save everyone. He turns to Luo Feng and notes that despite his bad character, he is very courageous. Then he offers Luo Feng to be his younger brother, but several mercenaries appear behind him at that moment. Luo Feng is amazed at the current state of affairs and, standing over the body of the mercenary commander, warns Shi Xiao of the danger. At this moment, the young hero asks Luo Feng to duck, and as soon as he does, a fiery blade flies over his head. Meanwhile, Shi Xiao spins the fire blade in his hands and destroys all the mercenaries who tried to attack him. The mercenary commander lies motionless on the ground and watches with fear in his eyes. After defeating the mercenaries, the young hero approaches Luo Feng and his disciples, who thank him for saving them. And the young hero ignores the others and tells Luo Feng he deserves forgiveness. At this moment, Luo Feng falls to his knees and bows his head, asking Shi Xiao to make him stronger. Then the young hero slams his foot sharply against the floor, and the dagger flies high up. Shi Xiao deftly catches the dagger and says he is willing to give Luo Feng some strength for his noble deed. Then he holds out his dagger toward Luo Feng and suggests that he deal with the mercenary commander himself. Without a shadow of a doubt, Luo Feng takes the blade with both hands and brings its blade over the mercenary commander's head. And the mercenary commander still can't move and only begs Luo Feng for mercy with a pitiful voice. However, Luo Feng makes a fatal blow, and then a tremendous force envelops his body, granting him new abilities. After that, Luo Feng thanked the young hero for his new strength, and Shi Xiao extended his hand forward and asked him to stop bowing down to him. The other students kneel with pitying faces and beg the young hero to share his power with them. However, the young hero calls them scum and says that none of them are worthy of his time and energy. At this moment, Luo Feng unties the teacher's hands and turns to the other students, not to molest Shi Xiao. Once the teacher is freed from the rope's bindings, she smiles and thanks Luo Feng for her rescue. He's embarrassed by her words, gets very uncomfortable, and says he's not worthy of such praise. Meanwhile, the young hero continues to free the students, and the teacher informs him that there are still hostages in the school. Then Shi Xiao opens the information panel and scrutinizes the area map to determine his future plan. At this moment, a magical window appears above the school building, informing the young hero about his opponents. Shi Xiao looks carefully at the detailed map and learns that the mercenaries still have a few commanders left. Then he turns to Luo Feng, asks him to escort all the students to a safe place without mercenaries, and points the way. And then throws a poison dagger towards Luo Feng and talks about how this item can help. Luo Feng scrutinizes the item and notes that the young hero should not share such a rare item. However, the young hero insists Luo Feng take the item and warns that its use is limited. Luo Feng thanks Shi Xiao for the valuable gift and promises to escort everyone to safety. After a while, the young hero finds himself outside and uses the information panel to view the map. He discovers an armored personnel carrier nearby and notices that one of the mercenary commanders is inside it. Then he decides to go into his pocket gear to upgrade his level for more confidence in his abilities. When Shi Xiao spends experience points, his body is filled with power and bright flames surround him. Suddenly, a dashboard appears in front of the Lord's account with a list of skills to choose from. Shi Xiao scrutinizes the proposed list and selects a defensive skill for the upcoming battle. He smiles slightly and can't wait to use his new skills in battle. Meanwhile, a few fighters guard an armored vehicle and discuss that the peaceful area is very calm. A mercenary tells his comrade about the existence of dangerous monsters that destroy everything outside the safe zone. From the story of his friend, the mercenary becomes worried and notes that he is happy to be in this place. At that moment, a young hero runs past them, instantly engulfing their bodies in bright flames. The other mercenaries try to stop the young hero's advance and open fire with machine guns. However, with the help of his flaming sword, the young hero nullifies all attacks of the Black Tiger mercenaries. At this moment, to Shi Xiao's great surprise, several grenades appear above his head. A loud explosion and a huge flame of sweat completely engulf the young hero. The commander of the mercenaries observes what's happening on the armored personnel carrier and notes that the intruder has been defeated. At this moment, several mercenaries approached the huge flame to ensure that Shi Xiao would no longer interfere with them. To everyone's surprise, the young hero appears in flames and uses his blade to create a fire vortex. All the mercenaries instantly fall to the ground. The squad leader cannot believe in such a turn of events and is frightened by what is happening. At this point, the young hero smiles while several fire shields swirl around him to protect him from enemy attacks. However, the mercenary commander does not pay attention to this. He comes to his senses and opens fire on the hero with his machine gun. Then Shishao quickly dashes towards the mercenary commander and dodges his bullets. Then he makes a high jump and is about to strike his opponent with his fire blade. But the mercenary commander defends himself from the blow with his machine gun and notes that the boy can't hurt him. At this moment, a look of amazement appeared on Shishao's face as he couldn't deal much damage to his opponent. The commander takes advantage of the young hero's confusion and hits him with all his might with his cannon. However, the young hero will not give up so easily. He covers his body with fire and prepares for a new attack. And the mercenary commander only taunts the young hero and holds up a strange object. Then he abruptly throws him to the ground and talks about how Shishao can never touch him now. At this moment, an energy shield around the mercenary commander completely absorbs Shishao's attacks. The young hero hops on a nearby armored vehicle and tries to think about his next plan of action. He realizes that his opponent's power lies in his items, so he decides to deprive him of that advantage. So, Shishao puts his life on the line and breaks into his opponent under the cover of his shield. The mercenary commander keeps firing his machine gun at the young hero and doesn't realize what he's doing. Suddenly, the young hero nimbly dashes past the commander, and clots of flame begin to form around him. After that, there is a powerful explosion at the place where the mercenary commander is standing. Shishao protects himself from it with his shield. The flames gradually dissipate, and the mercenary commander scrutinizes himself, wondering why he didn't take damage. He ignores it and continues shooting Shishao with even more enthusiasm. The young hero only has to defend himself with his shield, but his health gradually decreases. A click occurs, and the mercenary commander's giant machine gun stops firing. After that, all of the mercenaries' armor and weapons are trashed, and the commander is left completely naked. He immediately falls to his knees and tries to gather all his equipment while Shishao watches on. While the mercenary is gathering his equipment, Shishao regains his health and says the battle is over. However, the mercenary commander is not going to give up. He grabs a grenade and says that even without equipment, he can fight. But the young hero, without delay, puts a flaming sword to his throat and tells him that it's best not to mess with him. Then, with an emotionless face, he talks about how he can send the mercenary commander to the other side of the world at any moment. At this point, the mercenary realizes the direness of his situation and asks to be spared. He points toward the valuables box and says he knows its code. Then, the young hero approaches and demands that the mercenary commander open the box for him as quickly as possible. The mercenary commander, with anger in his eyes, carried out this order, constantly cursing Shishao in his head. He slowly presses his fingers over the buttons and hopes someone from the squad will come to his rescue. Periodically, the mercenary commander turns toward the young hero and imagines how he's defeated him. After a few minutes, the chest opens, and rare items that emit a blinding light lie at its bottom. At this moment, the mercenary commander turns to Shishao with a slight smile and says he deserves mercy. However, the young hero does not agree with this. He immediately sets the mercenaries on fire and says that he is not going to forgive them. The mercenary commander's entire body is engulfed in bright flames, and he runs away from Shishao, hoping to find salvation. After some time, the hero examines the mercenary commander's body and, to his disappointment, does not notice valuable items. Suddenly, he finds a key to the dungeon and hopes this item can help him greatly. Then he walks over to the open chest with a smile and scrutinizes its contents. Quite quickly, Shishao's face lights up with a bright smile because he finds a magic crystal of a scarce specimen. Immediately afterward, the young hero is transported to the pocket dimension to unlock new skills with the help of the experience gained. He opens the skill panel of his fire account, but notices that all skills require a high level. Then Shishao sighed heavily, but did not lose heart and decided to open a new Lord account. He scratches his beard and hopes to get a valid account through luck. Then he points his finger sharply at the closed account and asks the system to unlock it immediately. The map begins to spin before the young hero and then emits a strange glow. In a minute, the young hero is presented with a new account of a dark inventor with a wide array of skills. However, the young hero is frustrated because he has been given a non-combat account. Then, Shishao opened the information panel, which he hopes will give him more information about the account. To his great joy, he learns that the account has many options and can create items. At this moment, around the hero, many magical gears appear that greatly surprise him. Suddenly, a small robot appears in front of him and says that it will help Shishao from now on. However, the young hero asks the robot to take his time and tell more about everything. At this point, the robot's face turns malevolent, and he suggests that the young hero should take over the world. But Shishao isn't interested in that and has a menacing look as he demands work to never mention the idea. Then, he asks the robotic assistant to elaborate on the abilities of the inventor's account. The robot gets slightly upset after Shishao's words, but elaborates that the new account can create various items. This information pleases the young hero greatly. He assumes that he can create unique items thanks to the new account. The robot continues his story and notes that each unique item requires a special drawing. The young hero listens intently to the robot's story and considers the Lord's new account. Before finishing his speech, the robot assistant notes that the young hero can change accounts at any time other than combat. Suddenly, the young hero declares that he has kept Mistress Mo waiting too long, and the workers are upset that his master is leaving. Meanwhile, Mrs. Mo sits in a spacious cabin surrounded by many Dark Tiger mercenaries. Mrs. Mo warns the mercenaries that their actions will have serious consequences and demands her release. However, the mercenary commander only laughs at her words while sitting in his chair and points out that they kidnapped the girl for a reason. He abruptly turns around to face Mrs. Mo and notes that the Huangjiang clan hired them for this operation. After that, the Black Tiger heads towards Mistress Mo, who is extremely unhappy with the situation. The head of the mercenaries points in the direction of Mo's lady bodyguards, who have turned into statues, and notes that no one will help the girl. However, Mrs. Mo is not worried and notes that all the mercenaries from the Black Tiger clan will regret their act. Suddenly, the mercenary sits next to Mrs. Mo and offers to help her for a specific fee. He smiles broadly and says that for 100 million he's willing to help Mrs. Mo and free her. However, Mrs. Mo is disinterested in the deal and says she will never deal with the Black Tiger clan. The head mercenary becomes furious after Mrs. Mo's words and says she will regret her decision. However, the mercenary's words do not scare the girl, and she says that she will never deny her words. At this moment, the mercenary unhappily clucked and drew his swords from their sheaths to send Miss Mo to the other world. But suddenly, a purple shield appears around the girl, and the blades of the head of the mercenaries do not reach their target. Mrs. Mo turns around and tries to figure out who saved her life. To her surprise, she sees a young hero in the doorway who smiles broadly and demands a hefty sum for her rescue. Mrs. Mo's face is worried as she worries that Shi Xiao is too weak to fight the mercenaries. Meanwhile, the head of the mercenaries becomes enraged by the young hero's actions and rushes at him with 2 swords without further thought. But with his fire shield, Shi Xiao blocks the attack and tells the mercenary that he is not as simple as he may seem. At this point, the young hero notices that the head of the Black Tiger mercenaries is a dangerous opponent and should not relax. Mrs. Mo turns to the young hero loudly and asks him to run away from her as fast as possible while he is still alive. Meanwhile, the mercenaries come close to the barrier and fire their machine guns at it. Shi Xiao only smiles and says that no one can break through the protective barrier around the girl. Even though Mrs. Mo is under fire from the mercenaries, she is worried about Shi Xiao's life and follows the battle closely. For a while, Shi Xiao and the head of the mercenaries exchange blows, but the young hero's health is quickly ending. The young hero then arms himself with his special shield and runs to attack the mercenary with a loud shout. And the mercenary is surprised at such recklessness and says not to underestimate him. At that moment, several small grenades appear above the heads of the mercenaries and their head. But the mercenary's leader is not worried. He creates a shield in front of him to protect himself from the exploding grenades. However, to everyone's surprise, instead of an explosion, a web deals damage and entangles all the mercenaries. The young hero smiles broadly and notes that his modified grenades always reach the enemy. After a while, the head of the mercenaries burst out of the web and looked at Shi Xiao with anger in his eyes. Then he combined his 2 swords into a single blade that began to emit a large amount of energy. At this point, Shi Xiao realizes he's in big trouble, so he takes a defensive stance and prepares to strike. In a second, the head of the mercenaries unleashes his strongest attack on the young hero, but at the last second, Shi Xiao defends himself with his shield. The young hero looks at the mercenary in surprise and is amazed at his opponent's strength. He tries to counterattack his enemy, but the mercenary's head has no problem dodging and notes that the young hero is too slow. After saying that, the mercenary delivers a crushing blow and turns Shi Xiao's shield into a pile of debris. Then, the young hero steps back and uses fire magic to strike the mercenary. However, the Black Tiger with his sword blade blocks all the fire headed in his direction. Mrs. Mo watches the whole situation with her mouth open in amazement. She can't believe that someone has such great power. Meanwhile, the young hero brings the blade of his blade down and creates a vortex of fire around him. He looks at the head of the mercenaries without fear in his eyes and says that he will show what he can do. After these words, a vortex of flame is created around the Black Tiger, but this magic doesn't do much damage to the mercenary. The black tiger burst out of the fire flames with a quick jerk and headed towards Shishao to deal with him in one blow. Suddenly, a massive turret appears before him, opening rapid fire on him. The head of the mercenaries looks at the cannon in surprise and doesn't understand where Shishao got such an item. Meanwhile, the turret fires at the mercenary and doesn't stop for a second, and the head of the mercenaries uses his energy shield to protect himself from the onslaught of bullets. At this moment, Shishao taunts the black tiger and tells him he got this weapon from his captain. Meanwhile, the mercenary's barrier cannot withstand the hail of gunfire and collapses before his eyes. Then, the black tiger moves around the room in quick jerks and tries to avoid the turret's fire. He then abruptly turns around and rushes toward her, parallel reflecting the bullets with his sword. In one blow to deal with the machine gun turret, the head of the mercenaries is sure that he will defeat Shishao himself exactly the same way. He turns the turret into a pile of garbage with his blows and demands the young hero show himself before him. However, the head of the mercenaries notices very late that Shishao is behind his back with a magic dagger. The black tiger turns around sharply and says the young hero's blows can't penetrate his armor. But despite these words, the head of the mercenaries falls to one knee due to the fatal blow from the dagger. Gentlemen, Mo is surprised that the mercenaries took lethal damage and assumes that Shishao has a special dagger. Meanwhile, the black tiger is trying to get up, but the activation of a special item has covered his entire body with electrical energy. He becomes enraged at having to spend a lot of items on a low-level opponent and grits his teeth in anger. The young hero seizes the moment and tries to strike a fatal blow with his sword, but the mercenary easily blocks the attack. At this moment, the mercenary is at the peak of his anger, and his veins are swollen with rage. With his sharp blow, he makes the young hero fly several meters away from him. Shishao crashes his back into the concrete wall with all his might and suffers extensive damage. Meanwhile, the head of the mercenaries pulls a special syringe from his pocket and jabs it into his neck. After that, he is filled with energy and his body transforms. The young hero watches this with great amazement and considers that battles at high levels look completely different. He decides to jump a few meters away and waits for further action from the head of the mercenaries. Madame Mo is also watching this and is worried that Shishao might be unable to handle the black tiger's strength this time. Within seconds, the mercenary's body transforms, and the young hero sees a giant blue monster before him. At this point, the young hero spreads his hands and, without worry, says he has no more trumps. The head of the mercenaries gets furious at this phrase and rushes at Shishao to send him to the other world. Despite the approaching threat, the young hero does not move from his seat and waits for the mercenary to make his attack. Looking directly at his enemy's blade, he says the black tiger has already lost this battle. Simultaneously, two bodyguards around Shishao protect him from the mercenary head's attack. The young hero laughs at the black tiger and talks about how the fight has ended. The story shifts back to a few minutes ago when the young hero listens to a mercenary talk and prepares to free the bodyguards. When the head of the mercenaries guesses about Shishao's actions, he experiences an indescribable rage and does not understand how the hero managed to obtain a special item. Like many others, the young hero talks about finding the item in the mercenary's stash. This situation makes the head of the mercenaries even angrier because he has spent a lot of effort collecting rare items. At the exact moment, Lady Mo's bodyguards make a joint strike and fatally damage the heads of the mercenaries. Enormous power emanates from the hands of the bodyguards while Shishao silently watches what happens next. And the body of the head of the mercenaries, despite his great strength, goes flying towards the concrete wall. The black tiger's huge body breaks through several walls, and then the mercenary's head loses consciousness. The young hero admires the bodyguards and realizes that it's best not to fight with them. Mrs. Mo heads towards Shishao and gives him a special magic crystal as a reward for her rescue. But the young hero smiles broadly and notes that he had fun fighting a dangerous opponent. Mrs. Mo is surprised and doesn't understand why the young hero got into a fight with a man who is much stronger than him. At this point, Shishao explains that there is no point in life if you don't try to overcome circumstances that are stronger than you. In response to these words, Mrs. Mo only smiles and notes that she has always liked people like this. Then she looks toward the head of the mercenaries held by her bodyguards and says the young hero can have him for himself. Shishao looks at the defeated black tiger and thanks Mrs. Mo for such a valuable gift. Without a second thought, he creates a fiery blade in his hand to send the mercenary to the other side with a single blow. And the head of the mercenaries slowly raises his head and asks for mercy in a quiet voice. But these words don't touch Shishao's heart, and he stabs his blade into the body and then gains a tremendous amount of experience in items. Meanwhile, Mrs. Mo extends her hand in his direction and offers the young hero to join her squad. and the young hero smiles and asks the girl what he gets for joining her special unit. Mrs. Mo smiles widely and remarks that she hasn't seen people who are so fearless in a long time. But Shishao waves his hand and notes that he only wants to learn about all the nuances after joining the squad. At this moment, the bodyguards place their hands on Shishao's shoulders and remark that joining Mo's squad is a great honor. The lady puts her hand up and asks her bodyguards not to put pressure on the young man. The bodyguards head down the hallway to deal with the other mercenaries, and Shishao asks for their bodies to be left to him. Meanwhile, Mrs. Mo sits on the comfortable couch and beckons Shishao over to her. The young hero sits down against it and asks to be paid for saving the girl and winning the contest. Mrs. Mo smiles and remarks that the young hero is greedy, especially regarding money. From Miss Mo's words, the young hero becomes a bit distracted and notes that there is nothing wrong with greed. Mrs. Mo responds to these words by leaning closer to him and saying she entirely agrees with his point of view. However, the young hero is very cautious. He thinks Mrs. Mo is obviously up to something with him. Meanwhile, the girl releases a small robot from her hand. The robot falls to the floor and takes a comfortable position. Suddenly, it begins to emit from itself a bright beam of light that transforms into different images. When Mrs. Mo begins her story, the ray of light shows the young hero several heroes who serve her. The girl talks about how her elite squad has the best stats, and the robot immediately shows them to Shishao. At this moment, Shishao imagines how, after joining the squad, he would enjoy the rays of fame and become incredibly rich. However, Mrs. Mo notes that working in her squad requires a lot of effort, while the young hero thinks only about money. Meanwhile, the robot shows a huge number of monsters attacking one of the cities, leveling it to the ground. Mrs. Mo folded her hands on her chest and said that Shishao and her family would be able to live safely by joining the squad. She also explains to Shishao that the entire city is divided into safe sectors, and the closer to the center, the less likely monster attacks will occur. Miss Mo's words bring the young hero to his senses, and his gaze becomes very serious as he worries about his family. The girl with a smile on her face notices it, and realizes that she can manipulate the young hero by using this weakness. Currently, the robot broadcasts the vast equipment the elite squad uses, and the girl tells of a medical unit that ensures the safety of elite warriors. Afterwards, she rises from her chair and looks at Shishao, who awaits his answer. Then she fixes her hair, and her face flashes with the firm conviction that the young hero has agreed to her proposal. She notes that her life is less important than the value of an elite fighter, and promises the young hero a trouble-free life. The young hero looks the girl straight in the eyes, thinking over everything she said, but he is in no hurry to accept the offer. Then he casts his gaze downward and thinks about the fact that there's no hurry to accept Miss Mo's offer. And then, with a big smile, he says he needs time to think it over. Mrs. Mo doesn't blink an eye. She gives Shishao the card and says that he has 3 days to think about it. Shishao continues to smile and asks if all the promised money is on the card provided. Miss Mo unemotionally talks about how there's even more on the black card than the young hero requested. After saying that, Shishao tucks the card under his clothes and thanks the girl for such a valuable gift. At this moment, the door opens and Miss Mo and the young hero turn back. The headmaster appears in front of them, immediately falls to his knees, and apologizes to Miss Mo for the mercenaries. Cold sweat runs down his face, and he thinks his school will end after this incident. However, Miss Mo only smiles and says that this situation is not the fault of the school principal. And the headmaster again bows to the girl and thanks her for the generosity she has bestowed upon him. At this moment, Shishao notices that Mrs. Mo is very fair despite her strict temperament. Mrs. Mo only asks the young hero not to forget that he has only 3 days to think about it. The young hero bids farewell to Mistress Mo, promising to give an answer in the meantime. After that, the school principal comes up to him and thanks the young hero for helping the school. Shishao beats his chest and says that he is honored to serve the place where he was trained. At this moment, the principal says he is very proud of Shishao and calls him a talented student. Then he turns to his deputy and asks him to prepare a proper reward for Shishao. However, the young hero only smiles and refuses and asks the headmaster not to bother so much. The headmaster is adamant that Shishao should receive a proper reward and is unwilling to discuss it. Then he claps the young hero on the shoulder and asks him to take a break after the recent events. He says goodbye to Shishao and talks about how the young hero is a true hero and should be proud of that. After that, with a smile, he turns to his deputy and asks for a special item to be prepared along with the award. Shao overhears this conversation and tries to guess what object is being discussed. A few hours later, the young hero makes it to the medical facility where his family is. The whole family gathers around the hospital bed where the head of the family is lying, and they ask about his well-being. The young hero looks at his father with some concern because he worries about his parents' long recovery. At this point, his sister approaches him and asks how the school competition went, and the hero tells her that he won it. Suddenly, there is a knock on the door, and the whole family turns towards the sound to find out who has come to see them. At the door, they see the doctor and Mr. Zhang, the hospital's director, who greets them. Director Zhang apologizes to the young hero's family for the past incident and hopes everyone will get better soon. The young hero asks not to worry the director about the past and thanks him for giving his family the care they deserve. After that, the head of the hospital is about to leave the ward, but Shi Xiao asks him to stay for a while. He tries to find out from the director of the hospital if there is any remedy that would allow his father to recover immediately. The director nods and notes that the hospital has a rare antidote that could rid Father Shi Xiao of all problems. At this point, the head of the family tries to stop his son and asks him not to spend a lot of money on his treatment. But Shi Xiao only smiles and holds out a black card, wanting to pay for the rare antidote. When the hospital director sees the map, his mouth drops in surprise and he can't believe his eyes. The young hero scratches his head and does not understand why the hospital director is so surprised by the black card. Then the hospital head smiles and notes that treatment will be free of charge thanks to this card. He then turns to the doctor loudly and demands that he immediately bring a rare antidote from the warehouse. The whole family is shocked by what is happening and does not understand where the young hero got the money and connections with the highborn clan. The hospital head continues to smile and notes that he will move Shi Xiao's family to the best room. Meanwhile, Shi Xiao is also amazed by the black card's ability and realizes it's better to use it wisely. His sister approaches him and tries to find out where her brother got the Mo clan map, and Shi Xiao tells him that he saved Mrs. Mo. Xiao twirls the card and says his entire family will no longer need anything. A few minutes later, a doctor runs into the room and, with a confused look, informs that all the expensive medicines have disappeared from the warehouse. The young hero and the hospital director are amazed by such a situation and listen to the doctor with their mouths open in amazement. Shi Xiao's face turns serious, and he assumes that former director Fan is the one with whom he had a conflict. The head of the hospital turns to the doctor and tries to decide with him what to do next. He also guesses that Director Fan stole the medicine and is very angry. He then turns to Shi Xiao and apologizes for inconveniencing him and his family. However, the young hero smiles and asks to get the antidote elsewhere. Still, the head of the hospital shakes his head negatively. Suddenly, the chairman's face smiles, and he notes that Mrs. Mo could help Shi Xiao with this problem. At this point, the young hero has second thoughts and decides not to approach Mistress Mo to avoid being indebted to her. Meanwhile, the hospital head continues to apologize to the young hero and promises to provide his family with better treatment. He then turns to the doctor and asks him to prepare everything to put Shi Xiao's family in a better room. The young hero points to the doctor and remarks that such an employee needs a promotion. The head of the hospital agrees with these words and puts his hand on the doctor's shoulder, noting that he now has a new position. The doctor thanks Shi Xiao for his help, and the young hero says goodbye and leaves the hospital room. At the exit, he turns to his family and promises to get the rare antidote by any means necessary. The father asks his son to be careful about spending too much effort to find a cure. At this moment, Shi Xiao is approached by his sister, who demands an immediate explanation. When she learns more about the meeting between Shi Xiao and Mrs. Mo, she smiles and whispers with her parents. The girl smiles and thinks that she should definitely find out all the details about her brother's relationship with Mrs. Mo. Then she joyfully raises her hand and expresses her desire to go with her brother to find the cure. Xiao stops and tells her it's too dangerous, but the girl tearfully begs to be taken along. The young hero sighs heavily and agrees, and the head of the family asks his children to be very careful. After a while, Shi Xiao and his sister leave the hospital building and head towards the black market. The young protagonist's sister is shocked when Shi Xiao talks about what happened at school. The young hero then sees a wide smile on her face and asks her to keep this conversation a secret. Then Xiao smiles and discusses how they will get to the black market soon. However, several armed strangers appear on their way to rob them. At this point, the young hero's sister steps forward and is about to fight back against the bandits. And the raiders only laugh and call the young hero a pathetic weakling who cannot stand up for himself. Then, Xiao asks his sister to calm down and says he will handle the bandits himself. He then gives them a hard stare and demands they get out of the way as soon as they have the chance. One of the raiders puts his hand on his shoulder and demands that he turn his pockets outward. Then Shishao declares, with a smile on his face, that the bandits are very lucky and that he will not send them to the other world. After saying that, the bandit leader becomes enraged and is about to hit Shishao with his metal knuckles. Suddenly, however, some metal object hits the bandit in the head and he backs away from the young hero. Then, the bandit falls to the ground, and the young hero watches in amazement, not realizing what is happening. Suddenly, an unknown man appears on the battlefield and defeats all the bandits in a split second with his blade. The young hero's sister looks at the stranger with her mouth open in surprise and asks why he saved them. The man stood back, put his sword on his shoulder, and talked about how he was no longer a criminal. Then he turns around and smiles, saying the girl doesn't need to know his name. While Sister Shishao looks adoringly at the stranger, the young hero tries to discover the mysterious stranger's identity. The man continues to hide his identity and notes that he only saved Shishao and his sister because he knows the school they attend. Meanwhile, the young hero's sister tries to come to her senses and pulls at her cheeks to stop embarrassing herself. The young hero gets close to the stranger and notes that he can't trust the first person he meets. Then, the man with a smile tells us he works in a special unit. At this moment, the young hero's sister tells him that in front of them is most likely Encheng, the star of their school. She tries to speak softly and asks the young hero not to trust this suspicious man anyway. But Encheng is not offended by these words and, continuing to smile, offers to escort the young hero and the girl to the black market. Feifei smiles, and with a broad smile, he happily agrees to the proposal. Then, Encheng steps forward and asks to follow him because he knows a shortcut to this place. At this moment, Shishao hesitates. He assumes that Encheng is hiding something. But as soon as Encheng turns toward him, the young hero looks benevolent and talks about accepting the offer of help. Feifei notices her brother's insecurities, but the young hero tells her sister she has nothing to worry about. He then turns to Encheng smiling and asks for more details about his squad. But Encheng only scratches his head and confusedly states that he is in the reserve unit. And the young hero keeps going forward and thinks of a way to test the stranger's words for lies. He then creates a robot assistant near him, asking him to make a special item. The robot assistant talks about his arsenal of inventions, including X-rays, which greatly surprises Shishao. The young hero declares uninterested in such things and asks the robot to create a lie detector. He tries to whisper to the robot and notes that he needs to verify Encheng's words. Then the robot says confidently that creating such a light object is no problem for him. To test the item in action, Shishao approaches her sister and asks who she thinks is more beautiful than him or Encheng. Feifei, with a confident look, says that Shishao is the most handsome, but the detector says that the girl is cheating. The young hero then approaches Encheng and asks about the actions of the Huangzheng clan in the school. Encheng turns around and remarks that he hasn't heard anything about Huangzheng's actions in this territory. Then the young hero only smiles and says Huangzheng probably wants to recruit recruits. After saying this, Encheng stops, scratches his head, and notes that the information about the recruits is false because he is doing it personally. After a while, the heroes reach the black market. Encheng approaches first and has a friendly chat with the guards at the entrance. The guards let Encheng forward with a smile and wished him a good time. The young hero then tries to move forward, but the black market guards stop him, and Feifei hides behind his back. At this moment, Encheng turns around and asks the guards to let Shishao and his sister pass. But to his great surprise, he notices that the guards are very kind to Shishao and offer him a smoke. This situation greatly shocks Encheng. He watches the developments with his mouth open in surprise. Meanwhile, the young one replies to the guard that he is not interested in cigarettes and asks why he is treated so well. The black market guards say that everyone has heard a rumor about the young hero's relationship with the mistress. Shishao smiles widely when he realizes his situation, and his sister asks which mercenary fighting unit the mercenaries are talking about. Meanwhile, the black market guards open the main doors and invite the young hero inside. The young hero walks forward while Encheng stands still and tries to recover from what just happened. Encheng carefully watches after the hero and ponders the situation at hand. And then, with a smile on his face, he decides that he should keep a close eye on Shishao and his actions. After a while, the heroes find themselves in a black market building where there are a huge number of different people. Cheng walks ahead and tells Feifei how the black market works and what to do to avoid getting in trouble. Then he turns to Shishao and talks about keeping your mouth shut here and quickly buying what is needed. The young hero thanks Encheng for his help and promises to be very careful in this place. Then he notices that an information panel has appeared in front of him with a message of an invitation from An Chung. The young hero gladly accepts the invitation and notes that he hopes An Chang will help him. The mercenary says goodbye to the heroes and once again asks them to be careful in this dangerous place. Xiao smiles absent-mindedly as he looks at An Cheng leaving and thinks he must be cautious with this person. The heroes continue to stroll through the black market, and Fei twists her head from side to side, trying to find out where to buy the medicine. And the young hero turns back because he feels someone is glaring at him. Intuition does not lead Xiao, and he sees the girl sitting near the bar, staring intently at him. When the girl notices the young hero's gaze, she smiles at him and turns in his direction, holding a glass. A stranger offers the young hero to spend the evening with her. Still, Fei says that Xiao came here for another reason. The girl starts laughing and says that she just decided to play a joke on the young hero. Then she digs behind the bar's counter and talks about finding a place to buy everything she needs. After that, the girl comes closer and calls herself a representative of Mo's clan who keeps order here. At this moment, Xiao summons a robot assistant and asks it to check the girl's words for accuracy. The young hero is stunned when the robot informs him that Shiyu's representative is watching him. The girl immediately approaches Xiao and whispers in his ear that she knows a great place where you can buy rare goods. After that, she grabs his hand and asks him to follow her, despite Xiao's objection. Meanwhile, the rest of the people are watching this picture, with their mouths open in amazement and cannot believe the truth of what they see. Fei becomes enraged by Representative Shiyu's actions and demands that she leave her brother alone. However, the girl continues to lead him to the clan room, and as soon as everyone steps inside, the massive doors slam shut behind them. The young hero and his sister find themselves in a huge room of the Mo clan, which serves as a place for trading. Clan representative Xiyu explains to Xiao that you can buy rare items with the magic cube here. She also notes that secret items of scarce quality can be purchased here due to the Mo clan's high ranking. The young hero opens the information panel without too much emotion and notes that his main goal is to buy an antidote. Quite quickly, he finds the seller, who turns out to be Mr. Fan, the former director of the hospital. Then, the young hero crosses his arms across his chest with a disgruntled look and notes that the director has stolen medicine from the hospital. But he immediately cheers up, asks his sister not to worry, and promises that he will get the medicine without paying for it. Then, he turns to the clan representative and asks the girl to arrange a private meeting with the vendor. Then, the clan representative sits on her knees and tries contacting the seller through the dashboard. The young hero stares intently at the huge cube and waits for the former hospital director, Fan, to give his answer. However, the former director raises the price, and Fei suggests that Xiao give it up. The young hero asks his sister not to worry. The young hero promises his sister that he will not only get the antidote, but also bring out the former director. After a while, Mo clan's men lead Mo to the door and push him inside the room. The young hero sits in a chair and greets the former hospital director with a gloating smile. When the former director sees the young hero in front of him, he becomes furious and drops of sweat run down his face. He stares intently at the young hero, and meanwhile, Fei notes that the former director Fan is in front of them. At this point, the young hero smiles and asks how the director feels after the wounds he received. Director Fan slowly backed away, afraid that his disguise wouldn't work. He then abruptly heads toward the door and addresses the guard, noting that these children have no money to buy his merchandise. However, at this moment, Xiao pulls out a black card from his pocket and asks the former director not to worry about paying for the goods. Representative Xiyu confirms the young hero's words and notes that at least 50 million are on this card. At this moment, the former principal's face transforms into bewilderment, and he stares at Xiao with his mouth open. Then he swivels his head from side to side and tries to figure out where the young hero got his connection to Miss Mo. Meanwhile, the young hero smiles awkwardly and talks about how he'd like to make it up to Principal Fan if he were here. At this moment, the former director grabs his wig and says that Xiao's sincerity has touched him. And the salesman quickly removes all disguise and says he is the former director Fan. At this moment, Fei's face expresses great surprise while the young hero only smiles slightly. He then holds out a small case to the young hero and offers to examine the antidote. When he opens the case, the young hero sees 3 vials containing a strange liquid in front of him. Xiao leans over and remarks that this medicine most likely belongs to the central hospital. At that moment, the former director closes the briefcase and demands loudly that the young hero take his words back. Xiao only smiles and notes that the criminal who stole the antidote will be severely punished. Then the former director quickly turns back around, holding the briefcase in his hands, and heads towards the exit of the room. However, the security guards did not let the former director out and required him to stay on the premises for some time. At this moment, the representative of the Xiaoyu clan stares intently at the former headmaster. At her command, the guard grabs his hands and takes him directly to her side to scrutinize the briefcase's contents. However, the representative is worried because she fears accusing an innocent man of a crime. But the young hero smiles and promises the former director to make amends if he is not proven guilty. And the ex-director is smiling because he's fully confident that he's destroyed all evidence of his crime. He opens the case and looks at the clan representative and the young hero with a gloating smile. Meanwhile, the clan representative takes one of the flasks and scrutinizes its contents while Shishao watches. Suddenly, one of the girl's eyes lights up blue, and she accuses the former principal of stealing in a disgruntled voice. And at the command of the representative of the former director, the guards who had been standing nearby all this time immediately twisted. The director is pinned to the floor, and he is now pointing out that the evidence of his guilt is completely absent. At these words, Rep. Xiyu steps her foot on the former director's face and demands he shut up. She stares at him intently and explains that her eye has special properties to recognize hidden substances. Pointing to the flask of antidote, he says he knows exactly what the Mo clan's antidote is made of. The girl glares at the former headmaster for a while and promises him the harshest punishment. The young hero, along with Fei Fei, asked Representative Xiyu to preserve the life of the former hospital director. At this point, the spokeswoman says with a smile that she had no intention of sending the former director to the other side of the world. At that moment, Principal Fen smiles and says that he has fully learned his lesson. When the foot moves away from his face, he smiles slyly and thinks about getting away. However, he looks at the girl with great surprise when she tells him he will be sent outside the safe zone. He tearfully begs the clan representative to change this decision and devise a different punishment for him. Suddenly, however, he laughs loudly and says the entire city will be destroyed. Director Fan begins to praise some deity and promises that everyone will face a terrible end with his arrival. At that moment, the young hero will reflect on the words of the former director. He is alarmed by the information about monster attacks. She said that Xiao's face became grave, and he was sure that the safe zone would be attacked by monsters very soon. At this moment, Fei Fei notices that the former headmaster's words bother her, and he is worried about the monster attack. However, the clan representative puts her hand on her shoulder and tells her that the girl shouldn't worry. Then she talks about how special wall installations destroy every monster. And then, to Xiao's surprise, she throws him a suitcase of medicine and tells him that they now belong to the hero. Xiao is unsure about taking the antidote flasks, but the spokeswoman approaches him and insists on her decision. She stares intently into his eyes and talks about how she wouldn't mind a reward for her help. At this moment, Fei Fei quickly pulls the young hero away from the representative and says he will not allow his brother to be offended. The young hero's sister glares menacingly at Representative Xiyu and demands that she stop stupefying her brother's mind. Miss Xiyu smiles absent-mindedly and says this is just another one of her jokes. Then she turns to her guard and asks him to bring her 2 glasses of expensive wine. The young hero only smiles and promises to pay for the expensive drink if the girl tells him more about the old monster's attacks. The clan representative serves him a drink and says she doesn't want to remember these terrible events. At this moment, Fei Fei takes Xiao aside again and talks about her brother being too young to drink alcohol. Suddenly, Xiao's face smiles, and he says that he wants to buy his sister several million worth of equipment. Fei Fei is delighted by these words because she has never heard of such a large amount of money. The young hero offers his sister the opportunity to pick out the best gear on the black market. Then Fei Fei rather quickly heads to the information cube to find suitable items. Xiao asks her sister to take her time because they have enough time. After a while, the guard holding a strange object approaches the representative and says everything is ready. Afterward, the girl approaches the young hero and offers him a chance to participate in a rare auction. She explains that it displays scarce items that mercenary teams obtain the hard way. The young hero ponders the offer and notes that he doesn't have access to such an auction. But when the representative offers Xiao access, the hero quickly agrees and asks his sister to stay in the clan room. Then he smiles slightly and remarks that his luck has favored him today. After a while, Representative Ziyu throws the magic cube before her to open the passage. A magical porta-potty appears before the heroes, and the girl tells them the auction is right behind it. Before going inside, the girl warns that the auction is in a separate dimension to avoid problems. Then she grabs his hand with a broad smile and escorts him inside the portal. At this moment, Shi Xiao looks closely at the representative and assumes that the girl is up to something. However, his face quickly takes on a cheerful expression, and he steps inside the portal with the girl. Then the heroes find themselves on a vast platform, where many people are on magical platforms. The young hero and the spokeswoman don black cloaks and discuss the auction. The young hero looks around and notices that many people at the auction are hiding their identities under cloaks. After a while, Shi Xiao and Madame Shi Yu take their seats in the round box. Suddenly, an extravagant man appears at the center of the stage to announce the start of the auction. The young hero summons a robot assistant to his aid and asks him for advice on subjects. The robot, smiling, agrees to help the hero and notes that he will rate the items with stars. Shi Xiao thanks the robot for its help and asks more about the people in this place. But the robot looks away and, to Shi Xiao's disappointment, says that most people wear disguises. Suddenly, thanks to the robot, Shi Xiao notices An Chung, who has arrived at the auction with the group. Chung doesn't notice the surveillance and is discussing something with her teammate. After a while, the host asks all participants to take their seats in a loud voice. A bright light appears above his head, and the announcer says the first auction item will appear. A second later, a rare mana crystal appears, decorated with gold on the sides. The host, smiling, tells us that this is an ancient crystal that was mined quite recently. At this point, the clan representative advises the hero to buy this crystal because it can increase the owner's experience. However, the robot discourages Shi Xiao from buying it and notes that it is useless to the young hero. Suddenly, An Chung, standing in front, raises his hand and sets a high price for the mana crystal. After a few seconds, the announcer announces An Chung as the owner of the magic crystal. The young hero, smiling, is watching what's happening and trying to figure out what An Chung bought this magic crystal for. After a while, a healing elixir in a blue vial appears in the center. The presenter says that this item has great healing power and can save the bearer in a difficult moment. And the robot assistant looks at the item with a disappointed face and gives it 1 star. However, the young hero's eyes light up with excitement at the sight of the object, and he wants to buy it, but the robot talks him out. Within a few minutes, a huge number of people raise the price of the item occasionally because they want to buy it for their needs. After a while, a new auction item looks like a magical red cloak. The robot looks at the item with the same disgruntled look as before, but gives it 2 stars this time. And the young hero's eyes light up with excitement again because the item allows the wearer to fly quickly. The young hero hesitates to buy the item, and then the spokeswoman raises her hand to take it for herself. And the magical plaza ends up in a red box emitting a bright light. The girl smiles at Shi Xiao and offers the item as a gift. However, the young hero realizes the girl's intentions are not pure and refuses such a gift. Then, Shi Xiao offers to repurchase the item from the clan representative when he has extra money. The girl agrees to the proposal but is disappointed that she cannot make Shi Xiao her debtor. Meanwhile, the auction continues, and the host announces the following item, the value of which he is not particularly sure. And Shi Xiao is watching with his mouth open when he learns that the auction item is a rare blueprint. And a second later, a strange blueprint appears in the center, allowing you to create a special robot. At this point, the announcer says the starting price for the drawing will be 2 million. People talked among themselves and noted that even for such a small amount of money, no one would buy this item. The young hero looks carefully at the people around him and doesn't understand why no one is upping the ante. The robot assistant informs Shi Xiao that the master engineer skill is very rare, and such an item will not be useful to everyone. Then, a smile appears on the young hero's face, because this blueprint could be helpful to him. Then he turns to the clan representative and asks more about the people with engineering talent. The girl talks about how such an item is only needed by a few, and is usually bought for an entire clan. At this point, the young hero is rubbing his hands with happiness, because he realizes that no one will definitely buy it. Meanwhile, the host once again asks the participants if anyone will buy an item, but there is only a sepulchral silence in response. But suddenly the presenter's face and amazement look at the man who dared to raise his hand and buy the item. It turns out to be a young hero who, to the surprise of many, decides to buy the artifact, albeit for the starting price. The participants talked among themselves and called Shi Xiao a fool who didn't know about magic items. Meanwhile, the representative tries to dissuade the young hero and points out that he cannot use the item. However, the young hero only smiles and says he buys the blueprint to show off to the girls. But deep down he laughs and thinks that he was able to acquire a scarce item. The host snaps his fingers and, pointing at Shi Xiao, announces the owner of the rare blueprint. Shi Xiao smiles at the box containing his rare robot blueprint. However, the blueprint improves much to the joy of the young hero and the robot. Robot and Shishao envision in their heads a new robot that will completely obey them and enjoy this dream in their heads. With joy, the young hero waves his arms and does not notice that he hits the robot assistant with his fist. Meanwhile, the following item on the auction is a shield that protects its wearer from damage. It is followed by a blade that restores the wearer's health after its attack. As soon as these items are bought up, the host announces loudly that a new item is about to appear on stage. Suddenly, a vast monster appears in the center and the announcer says the auction item is the summoning stone. The young hero watches in amazement and cannot believe such objects exist. The spokeswoman smiles and tells us that the magic crystals they summon can fall from dangerous monsters. Then she gets very close to the hero and touches his chin with her finger, saying that Shishao is not ready for such monsters yet. At this moment, the presenter announces loudly and with a smile that the crystal bidding has begun. After a while, Shishao picks up the crystal for a very large sum and looks at the robot in frustration. Suddenly, there is a loud explosion and columns of smoke rise and the presenter jumps away from the center. And in place of the pillar of smoke appears a huge electromagnetic tank that serves to sweep the dungeons. All participants looked at the engineering marvel and prepared to bid for the item. The young hero looks at the electromagnetic tank with a smile and hopes that he will one day be able to create one. After a few seconds, the tank opens fire with its cannon to demonstrate the power of its gun. And the presenter comes up close to him and announces this tank's starting price of 50 million. At this moment, all participants raise their hands to raise the stakes for the electromagnetic tank. Meanwhile, Shishao and chairwoman Shi Yu are watching the bidding. Xiao's face looks very worried when he hears people offering astronomical amounts. However, he tries to remain calm and tries to see the person who buys the electromagnetic tank. After a while of bidding, a broad smile appears on the presenter's face because he is preparing to demonstrate a legendary item. Above his head appears the golden key that opens the dungeon of the 100th level. At the sight of this item, all bidders cheer and wait for the bidding to begin. And the young hero closely follows the participants. He does not understand why everyone is so animated at the sight of the key. At this point, the spokeswoman explains that the dungeon key has a strength that decreases over time. After saying those words, Shishao immediately opens the information panel to check the status of his key. He looks carefully at his key and is relieved that it seems intact. A drop of sweat ran down Shishao's face. He hoped that he would be able to open the dungeon with this key in time. Meanwhile, a very heated bidding between bidders is taking place for the legendary key. And the young hero scratches his beard and doesn't understand how people can have so much money. Once the bidding for the key is over, the host happily announces the display of the last auction item. After his words, a charming girl holding a wooden box appears in the center. Once the box is opened, everyone sees that it contains a small potion with the gift of immortality. Mo is furious at seeing it because she was not informed that the item would appear at the auction. Shishao turns to the robot assistant and asks if such a potion can be created with alchemy skills. And the robot sidekick tells us that such legendary items can only be obtained by battling powerful demons. Meanwhile, the presenter holds up the potion and discusses its special properties. One of the participants is worried that the potion might not work, but the host assures him that the potion is in good condition. The bidding begins, and the young hero looks on in surprise as the man announces a large sum for the potion of immortality. Suddenly, Shishao notices An Chung has also gotten involved in the bidding process and is naming large sums. The young hero's face is covered with cold sweat because the sums at the auction now seem incredible to him. After a few minutes, An Chung buys the potion for 300 million and is very happy about his purchase. The announcer bows low and a bright light envelops him, and the auction begins to end. Then, a bright light appears in the center of the auction, and all participants are teleported back. Yi Shishao returns to the black market with Repra Shi Yu. To his great surprise, the young hero notices that his sister hasn't finished buying herself items. He then turns to the clan representative and thanks her for the opportunity to be at the auction. Shishao then teleports to his pocket dimension and scrutinizes his lord accounts. He opens the information panel and studies the blueprint of the new robot with the robot assistant. Information panels open before him and he learns that he has enough resources to build a combat robot. At this moment, Shishao's face has smiled, and he hopes that he will be able to create a great robot. He slams his fist into his palm and proceeds to improve his skills to improve the blueprint. After a while, an information panel opens in front of the young hero, offering to choose the gender of the future robot. The young hero scrutinizes his options, and the robot sidekick smiles chemically and offers to make the girl a robot. At this moment, Shishao is running through his head exactly what a battle robot might look like. With a trembling finger, he reaches for the information panel so that the gender of his robot is female. At this moment, the robot assistant squints at Shi Xiao and says he knew about the young hero's choice beforehand. Then a new panel appears in front of Shi Xiao, allowing him to choose the type of future robot. He flips through a few options, slightly smiling and uncertainly choosing one. The robot assistant is about to say something. Still, the young hero turns sharply in his direction, and the robot is instantly silenced. Then, the information panel disappears, and the system announces the start of the robot creation process. The young hero sees the creation of the robot body he has chosen start out of thin air in front of him. However, many red panels suddenly appear around Shi Xiao and his robot assistant to report an error. After a while, they disappear, and Shi Xiao looks at the robot's body again, hoping that everything will go smoothly from here on out. At this moment, the robot assistant is watching the process with great anticipation in his eyes. At the same time, Shi Xiao is immersed in his own thoughts. Suddenly, the robot's body changes drastically, and instead of being a tall lady, it transforms into a cute little girl. The young hero looks very shocked and can't understand why his demands were ignored by the system. The battle robe opens her eyes and stares intently at Shi Xiao, asking him to explain what she was created for. At this moment, the robot assistant and Shi Xiao are stunned by the robot's beauty and can't say a single word. The battle robot rushes towards the young hero and talks about how she is scared to be in this place. Then the young hero strokes the robot girl on the head and promises he won't do anything bad to her. At this moment, a strange smile appears on the battle robot's face, and she thinks about being able to trick Shi Xiao. The robot's smile becomes insane, and the young hero's new assistant turns out to be a creature that wants to take over the world. Meanwhile, the robot assistant scrutinizes the robot creature and senses something is clearly wrong with her. He tries to understand the robot girl's feelings, but his sensors can't detect her mood. At the same moment, the girl robot tries to analyze the characteristics of the assistant robot, but she also fails to do so. But a smile appears on her face because she is sure that, thanks to her disguise, she will be able to take over the world. The young hero bows before her and, stroking her head, says that from now on, the girl will be called Nana and she will serve him. And the robot Nana smiles and promises to do whatever her new owner tells her to do. A few hours later, the young hero is home, and the girl robot is washing dishes by the sink. Fei is very happy to have a new helper in the house. But her mom, on the other hand, is worried about the little girl doing the work instead of her. The young hero lies on the couch with a book on his head and asks his mom not to worry and to rest as much as possible. He smiles at his family and talks about how his new robot was designed to help their family. Mom calms down, and Fei, with a smile on her face, continues to watch the girl robot wash the dishes. The family's father reads the newspaper and pays no attention to what's happening around him. However, the robot girl's eyes are tearful because she wants to rule the world, not wash dishes. A few days pass and vast crowds of students gather in the school's center hall. The principal stands in the pulpit surrounded by other teachers and announces that everyone is here to present an award. He tells us that thanks to one of the students, they saved Mrs. Mo and all the students in the building. Then he clenches his fist tightly and says that the whole school is immensely grateful to this student for his heroism and courage. At this point, the students look at the stage with smiles and eagerly wait for the hero to appear. The headmaster extends his hand and asks the young hero to come up on stage to receive his award. All the students look at Shi Xiao, who is slowly heading towards the headmaster with surprise and incomprehension. The principal and all the teachers clap loudly, and the students are indignant and don't understand how Shi Xiao could be a hero. The students laugh at Shi Xiao and assume the real hero's identity is purposely hidden. At this moment, Luofeng grabs one disciple from the crowd and demands, with anger in his eyes, that the young hero be treated with respect. Ruan Tian looks at Shi Xiao, who is heading toward the podium, and doesn't understand why the disciples don't believe in his strength. Meanwhile, one of the girls keeps a close eye on the young hero and assesses him. She speaks the young hero's name aloud, hoping it might memorize him. Once the young hero is on stage, the headmaster asks the students to show respect. He doesn't understand why no one recognizes Shi Xiao's strength. The young hero points out that the disciples don't understand his true power and ask him to continue the ceremony. At this moment, the principal awards Shi Xiao extra points and hopes that this will help the students recognize his merit. Then he coughs slightly and begins his speech by saying that their school isn't rich and famous. Then he removes the red blanket from the pedestal, and everyone sees the enormous amount of money that now belongs to Shi Xiao. However, the school principal points out that this money is worthless compared to the next gift he wants to give. After a moment, he pulled a bundle from his pocket containing an ancient map of the old lands. The young hero absent-mindedly looks at the map and points out that this is the school's main treasure, and he cannot accept this gift. However, the director insists on his decision and will tell the story of this card. His story begins with an ancient hero who was an accomplished warrior and adventurer back in the day. According to the teacher's story, mercenaries explored the ruined cities in search of rare items. Based on the story, mercenaries used torches and long cloaks to hide in the shadows from monsters. And the map itself points to the location of ancient ruins and powerful items. As he speaks, the director imagines the image of the ancient hero and hopes that Shishao will continue his work. The young hero ponders the director's words. He could not have imagined that the ancient map contained so much history. The director continues his story and points out that the hero and his map were once laughed at. However, during his wanderings, the hero proudly looks forward and pays no attention to others' words. After his story, the director hands the legendary map to Shishao. He asks that the legacy of the old hero be preserved and hopes that the young hero will find a worthy use for the artifact. Shishao proudly picks up the card and promises to do his best to continue the legacy of an old hero. Suddenly, the ground beneath the student's feet begins to shake, the ceiling begins to collapse, and small rocks fall down. A bright light appears on the ceiling, to everyone's great surprise, and the students point to it. At this point, the teacher asks all students in a loud voice to leave the room immediately. The young hero covers his face with his hand and realizes that the monster invasion has already begun. Meanwhile, the principal and the other teachers approach the portal where the monster is about to appear, and the students run away. A moment later, the silhouette of a giant monster appears in the portal and heads towards the humans. The monster laughs at the humans and talks about destroying them with one blow. It smiles broadly and exposes its sharp teeth with fangs pointed toward one of the students. The student is lying on the floor and trying to crawl away from the monster. He is very scared and promises that his dad will definitely help him. The monster is about to grab him with one hand, and the student tries to crawl forward and calls for his father. Suddenly, a sharp blade sweeps across the monster's theme and deals critical damage. The monster falls to the ground, and a young hero appears beside him, holding his flaming sword. He approaches the injured student with a disgruntled look, demanding that he get out of sight immediately. However, the disciple wraps his arm around Shishao's leg and tearfully asks to be escorted to safety. But this only angers the young hero, who says he's about to send his apprentice to the other side of the world. At that moment, the apprentice, with frightened eyes, runs away from the young hero, fearing that he will harm him. Meanwhile, the young hero is looking around and figuring out where the monsters will appear next. He scratches his beard and assumes that the level of monsters will gradually increase. At this moment, Ruan Tian and Luo Feng appear behind his back and want to help the young hero. And following that, a purple portal appears near them, where the monster will soon emerge. Then the young hero points toward the portal and asks his friends to prepare to fight the monster. However, Luo Feng grudgingly turns away because he doesn't feel like working with Ruan Tian on the same team. Meanwhile, a monster resembling a huge rooster appears from the portal and looks at the heroes with fury in its eyes. Xiao and Luo Feng stand beside each other, preparing to battle this monster. The young hero rushes forward and asks his comrades to make one last strike when the right moment comes. And his friends confirm in a loud voice that they will follow his instructions and then trail after him. And the monster only mocks people and points out that pathetic people are no match for his power. After a while, the young hero and Ruan Tian's stacked attack critically damage the monster. After the victory, the young hero squats down from exhaustion and talks about how his friends need to level up. Then they move on and notice more monsters that appear from purple portals on their way. Teachers try to save their students, but the bright flames of the fire turn people's bodies into ashes in a second. The young hero, meanwhile, notices that the entire year has been attacked by monsters that destroy all the houses in their path. He closely monitors what is happening and hopes his family will remain unharmed. Suddenly, a minotaur appears in the way of the young hero, who says he will destroy any man in his way. He immediately attacks Shishao, but the young hero manages to block the dangerous attack with his flaming sword. He then quickly swings his blade and delivers a critical blow to the giant monster. Luo Feng helps him and delivers the final blow, causing the monster to fall to the ground. However, the young hero hears a loud roar and instantly turns toward the sound. He sees a high-level werewolf heading towards a group of students not far from him. One of the teachers tries to protect his students, but he is too injured and can barely stand on his own 2 feet. The werewolf laughs at the sight of it and is about to send the wounded teacher to the other world with his blow. However, at that moment, the monster receives a deadly attack. He looks horrified at his wound and does not realize what is happening. The monster tries to attack his assailant, but the young hero, without delay, plunges his blade into the monster's body, causing it to scream in pain. The monster tries to shout something, but Shishao immediately carries another blow and sends it to the other side. The other teachers try to heal their wounds and look in amazement at the young hero's actions. The young hero, along with his team, approaches them and asks them to go to a safe area as soon as possible. He carefully watches the fleeing people and hopes to save them in time. Meanwhile, another monster emerges from the portal, looking for easy prey with a smile. However, as soon as he comes out of the portal, he gets a death blow, to his great surprise. The monster looks at his wound in horror and doesn't understand where this place gets its worthy warriors from. He tries to crawl away to safety, but Luofeng appears behind him to finish off the monster. With his axe, Luofeng makes a fatal blow and sends the dangerous monster to the other world. His whole body is enveloped by power, and he feels that, thanks to his victory, he has reached a new level. Then he turns to the young hero and thanks him and Zhuantian for the opportunity to gain new levels. And the young hero turns toward the new monster and asks his team to be careful. At this moment, a huge tiger with a higher level than the previous monsters appears in front of them. The young hero looks at his opponent with surprise and realizes that the level of monsters will only increase. Meanwhile, the monster quickly moves and begins circling the Jir squad. Then it rushes at Zhuantian, who has the lowest strength among all the squad members. However, the girl reacts quickly, creating a protective barrier to block the monster's attack. The monster cries out in pain after receiving a powerful blow to its back from the young hero's fiery blade. Shishao, holding his sword in his hands, stares intently at the monster and prepares for the next strike. He then swings his blade, and the monster falls to the ground after his strike. At this point, the young hero clenches his fist and hopes his family can handle the dangerous monsters in the city. Then he activates his unique ability and creates a fire eye in the air to scout the area. After that, a vast map appears in front of him, showing the locations of monsters and students. The young hero then turns to Luofeng and asks him to go to the safe zone with Ruantian, but Luofeng is unhappy with this decision. Then Shishao glares menacingly at both of them. His friends have nothing left but to agree with the young hero's decision. The young hero heads over to help the other disciples and wishes Luofeng good luck. After this, he goes forward, and Luofeng and Ruantian bid him farewell with smiles. Ruantian then approaches Luofeng and asks him to be gentle with her. The man agrees to protect her on her way to the safe zone. Then, he silently escorts the young hero with a glance and thinks he has changed much lately, thanks to Shishao. The young hero runs forward quickly and hopes to save the other students in time. During his journey, he reflects on what is happening around him and thinks he should learn a new skill. Without stopping, he contacts his pocket dimensions and thinks about what is better to use. To his surprise, he notices that he has a huge amount of experience that will allow him to greatly enhance his skills. Then he chooses the Fire Lord's account and increases the connection with him, so he doesn't have to decide for a long time. After that, Shishao felt his strength increase several times, and now he left a trail of fire behind him. At this moment, an information panel opens before him with a skill tree that prompts Shishao to choose one. And with a smile, the young hero decides to choose an attack skill to easily destroy monsters. After that, a hint appears on the information panel that the young hero can now cover his body with fire during battle. The young hero continues to run forward, confident that he will now definitely be able to save everyone. In a matter of minutes, he finds himself outside the school's main building, where the students are left. Meanwhile, several teachers and their students have barricaded themselves in the room, hoping that the monsters won't find them. The teacher tries to calm her students and tells them that they have an experienced warrior with them who will save them from the monsters. At that moment, there is a loud explosion, and people see the body of a monster covered in fire flying over their heads. The teacher looks at the monster with surprise and considers that he will now have to fight. However, a young hero appears, and everyone realizes he has defeated the monsters. The teacher looks at Shishao carefully and thanks him again for coming to her aid. The young hero accepts thanks from other students. However, the teacher is not happy with this situation. When the hero suggests that the teacher escort everyone to the safe zone, the teacher says that Shishao has no right to order him around. At this moment, the teacher looks at the teacher with incomprehension and says that he should listen to Shishao's words. At this point, the teacher is immersed in his reflections. Still, he is uncomfortable that the young hero has taken all the word for himself. He then pushes Shishao aside and discusses how he will escape alone. Suddenly, he feels a terrible pain in the hand that he tried to push Shishao away with, but he tries not to show it. The teacher promises the young hero that she will personally escort all students to a safe zone and asks Shishao not to worry. The young hero leaves, and all the students and the teacher, with smiles on their faces, wish him good luck. After a while, the young hero finds himself in front of the massive golden doors that lead to the library. He stares at them intently and assumes that there is a security seal on the door that will prevent anyone from entering this room. To his great surprise, the young hero opens the door and notices that there is someone inside the library. He opens his mouth, surprised to realize there is no protective seal, and looks around carefully. The young hero sees before him a huge room filled with magic crystals and other objects. From the room's beauty, Shishao stands in a stupor and enjoys the beautiful view. Suddenly, he hears a strange sound and turns around to recognize its source. He notices a girl not far from him who slams a huge trunk shut at his sight. The girl flinches and rises to her feet when she hears Shishao's voice calling out to her. The young hero smiles at the girl and notes that this place is not meant for students. Then the girl fills her hand with magic and asks how the young hero discovered her location. Shishao only notes that the girl is called the Frost Queen, and he doesn't expect to see any emotion on her face. After saying that, the girl surrounds herself with a barrier, and several daggers are thrown into the air around her. A beam shoots out from her hand and heads towards Shishao. The blade stops a few centimeters from the face of the young hero, who stands still without unnecessary movement. He smiles and talks about how he didn't mean to bother the girl. The Frost Queen freezes in a stupor when she sees that Shishao is about to leave the library. Suddenly, a high-level monster appears in the library's center, smashing everything in its path. Stones fly in different directions, but the young hero deftly dodges them by jumping. The monster then heads towards the girl with a smile, telling her he hasn't tasted human meat in a long time. At this moment, the girl jumps aside and aims many sharp daggers towards the monster. The vast monster has no trouble defending himself from blows and looks at his opponents with a gloating smile. The monster hits the ground with all its strength, with its fist and vast chunks of stone flying in different directions. The girl creates a barrier to protect herself from the monster's attacks, but the beast clutches the sphere with his hands and is about to destroy it. The protective sphere cannot withstand the monster's power and collapses, leaving the girl without protection. The monster opens his huge mouth and is going to swallow the whole girl who was in his captivity. The monster's eyes widen in surprise when he receives a fatal blow and loses his hand that was clutching the girl. Shishao catches the girl and tells her that he is going to defeat the monster and save all the school's students. The girl is about to object, but the young hero puts his finger on her lips and tells her he has no problem destroying the monster. The monster, horribly damaged by the young hero's attack, looks in his direction with hatred in his eyes. The girl crosses her arms over her chest and remarks that the young hero deliberately hides his actual level. The monster takes advantage of the young hero's inattention and rushes in his direction with great speed. The young hero dodges the deadly attack without much trouble and fills his hand with magical power. Shishao strikes without mercy and his opponent turns into a mountain of ashes. The young hero scrutinizes the amount of experience he has gained, and the girl notices that Shishao is firm. Shishao suggests that the girl find a safe place, but she objects and says she has other plans. A cold vortex appears around the girl, completely surrounding her from all sides, and she disappears. Shishao scratches the back of his head and doesn't understand the strange girl's act. The young hero looks around and notices gems among the debris. Shishao opens the magic map and tries to locate the remaining disciples. The mark of a legendary monster heading toward the school's hideout appears on the magic map. The school principal and students are in a safe bunker to protect themselves from dangerous monsters. The headmaster asks the students to remain calm and tells them that the doors of the asylum can protect them from monsters. A student raises his hand and asks the principal why the doors are designed to protect against level 40 monsters. The principal raises a finger and tells them that last time, they were attacked by monsters no higher than level 30. The head of the school approaches the gate and notices that a fortune has been spent on it. The young hero's companions stand near the wall and discuss the situation. The girl presses her knees to her chest and voices her concerns about the monsters that may threaten the young hero. The girl's musings are interrupted by a loud knock on the iron gate, which opens to reveal a protective seal. One of the students grabs his face and worries that the magic gate may not be able to withstand the onslaught of monsters. The young hero's companion runs to the door with a smile and ignores the teacher's warnings. Suddenly, a huge hole appears in the magic door and a giant monster claw appears. The young hero's companion is greatly shocked by this situation and cannot believe that the magic door failed in its task. There is a loud explosion, and the shards of the door, along with some students, fly all over the room in different directions. The doorway reveals a powerful 45th level creature that taunts the students in their attempts to hide. The monster lets out a loud laugh and is extremely happy that it was able to find a large number of people in one place. The young hero's companion looks at the monster with astonishment and thinks that all the students will soon end and there is no salvation. The huge monster scrutinizes the man in front of him and is amazed that someone is still standing there. The students scatter in different directions and try to find a hiding place. Still, the hero's companion continues to stand in front of the monster. Without too much thought, the hero's companion rushes into the attack, not a deadly monster. However, he does not really believe in his success. The monster has no trouble launching a counterattack and delivers a fatal blow to the man who dares to oppose him. The monster rises to his height and uses a special spell to instantly destroy all humans. The students are grabbing their heads, and their noses are bleeding due to the effects of the monstrous dark magic. Ruintian uses a magical barrier to resist the monster's spell, but she barely manages to control it. A giant monster grabs a man with its hands and swallows him whole to increase his level. An electric shock flies into the monster's head, stunning the beast and letting the student go. The principal gets into a fighting stance and uses magic to confront the enormous monster. A massive stream of electricity strikes the giant monster's body and causes it to freeze in one place. The principal is trying to catch his breath after using magic because he is ancient and can always use his magic. The monster makes a quick dash and pierces the headmaster's body with his dagger. He taunts him and talks about how lightning doesn't hurt him. The monster scrutinizes the headmaster and says that humanity should scrutinize its adversary. A huge mouth appears on the monster's belly with which it will devour the headmaster and raise its level. The director realizes that the last minutes of his life have come, so he looks at the monster without emotion and mentally says goodbye to his brother. All the students look toward their principal with bated breath, unable to believe the monster will soon devour him. Suddenly, a blob of flame appears around the monster, throwing it back and preventing it from engulfing the director. The students look in amazement at Shi Xiao, who saved the headmaster from the clutches of the bloodthirsty monster. Shi Xiao grits his teeth with anger and swears to himself that he will rid this world of this monster. A purple armor appears on the young hero's body, and around him, a huge amount of flame envelops his body. The monster looks at the young hero with a wide smile and says that no human can defeat him. Xiao pays no attention to the monster's words and gives it a fatal blow with magic without delay. The monster scrutinizes its body and can't believe that a level 6 human could deal such a blow to it. The young hero concentrates the fire in his hands and talks about how the monster will regret coming to this place. With the help of fire energy, Shi Xiao gains tremendous speed and heads toward the monster to deliver a fatal blow. The young hero moves with tremendous speed, deals the monster with many attacks, and augments it with fire energy. The legendary monster uses its special magic and flips Shi Xiao away from him, interrupting his series of attacks. The monster looks very shabby after the young hero's attacks, but can still continue the fight. The monster uses dark magic and subjugates the school's students to fight the young hero. The students shout strange words and rush towards the young hero without delay. The young hero carefully observes the actions of the distraught students and contemplates a plan of action. Shi Xiao uses her new skill, Sight, to analyze the performance of students exposed to the spell. In front of the young hero appears a pillar of fire that, in a split second, destroys all the students who try to attack him. The monster sends his new students into battle against the young hero and mocks the way Shi Xiao destroys his friends. Zombies indiscriminately attack everyone in their path and bite students to turn them into similar monsters. The monster laughs loudly and says that the young hero is incapable of saving all the students and fighting him simultaneously. Luo Feng suddenly appears to destroy the zombies and tells the young hero that he will protect the school's students. Zhuan Tian joins the battle and destroys the reanimated dead with fire magic. A young hero creates a magical barrier to protect the surviving students from the hordes of zombies that are heading their way. She said that Xiao's loud voice demanded people to listen to his clues and not hurt those who had not turned into zombified creatures. The monster is about to flee the scene of the battle, hoping that the young hero will be distracted by the student's defense. Suddenly, a massive turret appears in front of the monster and starts firing countless bullets at him. The magic turret deals the monster a huge amount of damage and allows it to advance towards the shelter's exit. A young hero appears on the back of a giant monster and asks him why he will flee the battlefield. Shi Xiao strikes hard and thereby strips the monster of its enormous wings, allowing it to move quickly. The vast monster falls to the ground, begging the young hero to spare him. The young hero will not spare the monster and immediately wears him a fatal kick with his foot right in the head. The monster spews a huge beam of venom from its mouth and hopes to delay the hero long enough for him to complete his mutation. A wide smile appears on Xiao's face, and he charges many fires at the monster. The monster tries to defend himself with his limbs against the young hero's magic, but has difficulty doing so. The monster realizes the direness of his situation and decides to destroy the turret with his corrosive acid. A wall of fire appears around the monster, preventing it from retreating. In the hands of the young hero appears a flaming sword, and he informs the monster that the hour of reckoning for all his sins has come. Xiao stabs his fire sword straight into the ground, and flames emanate from it in different directions. Because of the hero's magic, the monster falls into a distorted dimension only accessible to a few magic users. The young hero concentrates energy over his head, and a massive scarlet star of destructive power appears above him. A giant scarlet star heads towards the monster and illuminates its entire body. Xiao put away his armor and pondered over the words of the monster, who managed to say his master's name before perishing. The young hero receives many rare items, including a magic crystal and acid stomach juice. Xiao sighed heavily because he expected to get some legendary item from the monster. Xiao will combine the worm's paws with the giant egg he got in the battle. The dragon egg splits open, and out of it emerges a long tongue that quickly grabs the paws of a giant worm and devours them. The egg licks itself and feels a strong sense of joy because the young hero has given it such a gift. Xiao leans over the egg and contemplates whether he should continue to feed the strange creature. The young hero's companions are very happy that the monster was defeated, and Xiao remained unharmed after the battle. Xiao looks at his friends with a wide smile and rejoices that his companions have found common ground. Tears appear in Ruantian's eyes, and she talks about how many people they could not save today. Xiao strokes the girl's head and says that losses are inevitable in emergencies, and one must be prepared for them. Many students surround the young hero on all sides and thank him for their rescue from the monster. The girl is cradled tightly in her lap, and the teacher asks her to keep her spirits up and keep an eye on the headmaster. The teacher's face widens as she explains to her students that they will soon all be safe. Xiao also tries to cheer up the students and says that the monsters in the school have been destroyed, so it's safe now. The headmaster is still unconscious, and a teacher and a student are trying to revive him. The young hero's face becomes serious. He scrolls through a large number of thoughts in his head and makes further plans. Xiao goes outside the school and notices that the entire city is engulfed in huge flames, and the smoke completely obscures the view. An information panel appears before the young hero, and he hears his sister's voice trying to contact him. The young hero is very concerned about the situation. He tries to find out from his sister if everything is all right with his parents. The connection is cut off, and Xiao runs as fast as she can toward her home to reach her family. Xiao's face fills with fear when he finds himself in front of his house. Xiao stands in front of the destroyed building and can't believe his nightmare has come true. The young hero clenches his fist tightly and hopes his family manages to escape and survive the monster's attack. Suddenly, there is a scream of a girl trying to escape from a giant monster. Xiao delivers a fatal blow without delay, and a bright line splits the monster into two equal parts. The security girl thanked Xiao for help and asked her to free her leg from under the rubble. Xiao carries a swift kick, turns the rocks into a handful of ash, and thus frees the girl from under the rubble. The young hero looks very worried and asks Qinlu to tell him about the situation in the city immediately. The girl drinks a healing elixir and tells the hero that all the inhabitants were evacuated safely before the monsters attacked. The young hero apologizes for his behavior to the girl and explains that among the evacuees was his family. Qinlu picks up his rifle and tells him that all the residents have been sent to the underground shelter. The girl comes closer to the young hero and clarifies that she cannot guarantee the safety of all people in the city. Tears appear in Qinlu's eyes, and she talks about how her squad is unable to deal with a high-level opponent. The girl snuggles up close to the hero. She offers to escape together from this city to survive and avoid the high-level monsters. The young hero puts his hands in his pockets and refuses the girl's proposal to save his family. A high-level monster suddenly appears in front of the heroes, interrupting the conversation between Xiao and Qinlu. The young hero is about to attack the monster when Qinlu suddenly pushes him forward to use Xiao as bait. The girl runs back and apologizes to the young hero for having to use him as bait. The monstrous ash leopard ignores Xiao and rushes after the fragile girl. The girl tearfully turns toward the young hero and asks him to save her from the dangerous monster. Shishao stands there like a stumbling block and does not pay attention to the girl's screams for help. After a while, the young hero intervenes and delivers a fatal blow to a huge ash leopard. The girl extends her hand towards Shishao, and through pain apologizes to him, but the young hero does not react to her words in any way. Shishao looks at the girl sternly and says she is to blame for the situation. Before going to the other side of the world, the girl holds out a plan for the area for the young hero. Shishao gets down on one knee beside the girl, covers her eyes, and then takes out a map showing the layout of the city and the surrounding area. A large column of armed men and military equipment moved along the ruined city streets. The squad leader is extremely unhappy with the situation. He smokes a cigarette and complains to the sergeant that he should be resting now. Sergeant Shen Bing listens to his commander with a smile and reports that many units have fled the city. Commander Wang Jiangguo hugs his lieutenant tightly and notes that Shen Bing is talking a lot today. The sergeant and the commander are very surprised when they hear a message over the radio about a missing girl who was trailing the convoy. The commander sighed heavily and said he had long suspected a possible desertion during the rescue operation. Wang Jiangguo is very unhappy with the situation, and his lieutenant offers his candidacy to search for the missing girl. The commander watches the burning city in silence for a while, and then authorizes his lieutenant to go in search of the missing soldier. Sergeant Shen Bin scrutinizes the photo of him and his girlfriend and hopes the girl is still alive. The commander closely monitors Shi Yunfei because the young hero's family seems suspicious. Shi Yunfei tries to contact her brother using the information panel, but the connection keeps getting cut off. Everyone in the neighborhood looks in amazement at the little girl who carries a huge backpack on her back. Xiao's mom apologizes to the girl robot and talks about leaving the heavy backpack on the ground. The girl of work tries to be nice and friendly to everyone, but her thoughts take on an eerie shape. A column of survivors reaches the shelter's entrance, where they are met by a special military group. The soldiers ordered the bunker gates to open, and the transport was driven inside the shelter without obstruction. A massive earthquake hits the entire land, and all the armed men look around for a threat. A giant demonic millipede emerges from an ambush, destroys the truck, and is about to deal with all the humans. The rest of the refugee transportation is also attacked by strange monstrous creatures that destroy all transportation. People scatter in different directions to find shelter, and monsters with smiles on their faces chase them to destroy them. The squad leader appears on the battlefield, deals with several monsters, and saves people from perishing without delay. Commander Wang summons his sergeant and orders him to move with him to hold off the high-level monsters. A giant millipede with rage looks at the approaching soldiers and is about to destroy them in one blow. People are frightened by the situation and constantly push each other in different directions. Due to the crush of the crowd, the young hero's mom loses her balance and falls over the ground, at which moment a huge wolf appears. The monster swings his huge paw at the defenseless woman and is about to massacre her in one blow. At the last moment, arrows hit the monster's arm and stop its deadly attack. Shi Yunfei saves her family from the monster's clutches and proceeds to bombard it with her enchanted bow. Tears appear in the monster's eyes because of the pain of his wounds, and he glares menacingly at the girl who dared to defy him. The wolf-shaped monster moves quickly and tries to dodge many arrows flying at him. Shi Yunfei covers her parents with her body and asks them to run away, but they don't want to be in this world without their daughter and stay where they are. Yunfei closes her eyes and prepares to know that she will soon go to the other world. To help the young hero's family comes a girl robot, Nana, who deals with the monster without much trouble. Nana feels that she has become much stronger after destroying the monster and realizes that her body has become more obedient to her. The robot girl's eyes light up with red lights, and she lashes out at all the monsters in the neighborhood to improve her performance. A giant monster runs after a man in a red t-shirt because he hates that color so much. The robot girl quickly hits the monster with a few blows and sends it to the other side of the world. Nana enjoys gaining new skills and doesn't notice the surprise of the man whose life she saved. The vast monster looks towards the little girl and is about to run away as soon as possible to save her life. Nana notices the running monster, destroys it without regret in one blow, and earns extra experience points. The robot girl's face contorts in a vicious grimace. She takes great pleasure in destroying powerful monsters. Wang Qiangguo fights the millipede and marvels at the little girl's strength while the lieutenant heals his commander's wounds. The red millipede transforms into a giant wheel that runs toward the squad leader and damages him heavily. Suddenly, there is a loud explosion, and to the commander's surprise, the millipede splits into several different parts. A considerable number of millipedes cover the commander's body and suck the blood out of him. The lieutenant runs to his commanding officer's aid and hopes to divert some of the millipedes to himself. The commander extends his hand toward the lieutenant and asks him to stay away from him because it's too dangerous. In front of Wang Changguo's face flashed his memories of his family who lived outside the safe zone. Wang Changguo hugs the bodies of his family tightly and curses in a loud voice at the monsters that attacked the village outside the safe zone. In his last breath, Wang Changguo gathers his previous strength and scatters the swarm of bugs in different directions. The little bugs are about to attack the commander again, but are struck by red lightning discharges. A robot girl comes to the commander's aid and regrets that she can't get his experience points. The huge Scolopendra is greatly surprised by the little girl's strength and gains strength for a counterattack. The lieutenant quickly approaches her commander and administers first aid, and the girl heads towards the huge monster. Several magical weapons on the robot girl's back aim at the huge Scolopendra. All guns are fired at once at the enemy, and a giant orange sphere from the explosion appears in place of the monster. Nana walks over to the giant monster's body and laughs loudly at its useless actions. Suddenly, the girl falls to the ground and can no longer move. The young hero's parents quickly run to the robot and assume Nana expended all her energy during the fight. The squad leader approaches She Yunfei and discusses moving to the next safe zone. Yunfei tries to contact her brother and informs him they are going to another safe zone, but the connection is lost. The commander approaches the girl and suggests she get a message to her brother differently. Shi Yunfei quickly turns towards the commander and asks him to immediately tell him about the alternative communication method. Shi Xiao reaches the 5th safe zone, but sees only ruins and the bodies of defeated monsters in front of him. The young hero notices a strange writing on the wall and learns that his sister has headed towards another hideout. Shi Xiao folds her hands at her chest and examines the strange figures left near her sister's message. The young hero remembers that one of the lectures talked about some special security service code. Shi Xiao digs through the bodies of the defeated soldiers and searches for a communicator to communicate. A huge number of communicators appear in the hands of the young hero, but all of them are damaged. Shi Xiao heads to the black market building to find a communicator in good condition. A considerable number of guns are firing towards the young hero. Still, he has no problem defending himself with the help of a magical shield. The black market representative apologizes to Shi Xiao for her cold reception and asks the hero the purpose of his visit. The market representative offers the young hero the opportunity to condemn all cases indoors, where it is much safer than outdoors. The black market has not changed at all since the young hero last appeared. Here, people relax and have fun. Shi Xiao walks past the experienced hunters and doesn't understand why none want to help the city in its time of need. The young hero and his girlfriend go into a private room and discuss the situation. Shi Yu snuggles closer to the young hero and talks about how she fears the monster attack. Shi Xiao pushes the representative away, sits down opposite the young hero, and crosses her arms over her chest with a disgruntled look. The young hero sits down with the girl and says he needs a communicator to contact his sister. Siyu snuggles up to the hero again and gives some things away for nothing because talking about money hurts her feelings. Shi Xiao gets hold of a receiver and manages to contact the squad, escorting his family to safety. When Yunfei hears her brother, a smile appears on her face, and she recounts the events that happened to her and the squad. The family father carries Nan on his back because the robot has used up its charge in the battle with the monsters. The young hero is concerned that his robot can no longer continue fighting and thinks of a solution to the problem. Above Shi Xiao's head, his assistant appears and explains how to charge the robot Nanu. The young hero contacts his sister again and tells her that the robot can be charged with a magic crystal. Shi Xiao sits on a vacant bench and tells the commander about the secret but safe passage to the bunker. Commander Wang is amazed by Shi Xiao's knowledge and assumes that the young hero obtained the secret blueprints. The young hero interrupts and notices that the girl is asking the mercenaries for help to protect her family from monsters. The mercenaries smile at the defenseless girl and tell her that she will pay with her body to save her family. She says that Xiao will come to the stranger's aid and help her if she gives him the information he needs. The girl opens the information panel before her and shows her family's location on the map. The young hero scrutinizes the girl and offers to move on to discussing payment for the task. The girl offers a huge sum to save the family and indicates she can collect more soon. The mercenaries laugh loudly at the girl's claims that she doesn't have that many gold coins. A black market representative joins the conversation, appearing behind Shi Xiao's back and discussing the girl's abilities. The mercenaries begin to apologize to the girl and offer her their services to save the family. One of the mercenaries lashes out at the young hero to prove that Shi Xiao is incapable of handling the task. The young hero silences the mercenary with just one punch and gets everyone's attention. Shi Xiao becomes enraged and kills another group of mercenaries who dared to attack him. The girl watches the young hero's actions with rapt attention and is amazed at his strength. The representative of the black market also closely follows the hero's movements and notices that his strength has increased significantly. The young hero beckons the girl and asks her to move out immediately. Shi Xiao pauses for a moment near the exit and suggests that Ji Yu go to the city streets with him. The mercenaries are furious after the young hero's words and promise to take revenge on him for his antics. The market representative quickly wraps her arm around Shi Xiao's arm and agrees to accompany him. The young hero and the beautiful ladies head for the exit. At the same time, the mercenaries stare unhappily at his back and hope for revenge. Xie Yu and Miao wear sturdy armor and tell the hero they are ready to move forward. The heroes notice a strange, huge lightning bolt that brightly illuminates the night sky of the ruined city. With each rumble, more lightning bolts are placed in the sky, and a rift appears from which the claw of a huge monster can be seen. The young hero, along with his companions, is amazed as the monster destroys the black market. Shi Xiao carefully looks at the claws of the giant monster and analyzes the situation. Shi Yu is amazed when Shi Xiao remarks that an ancient monster may have appeared before them. Miao shrieks and falls to the ground, grabbing her head because she feels a massive amount of dark energy. The young hero watches the huge beast closely and tries to figure out where it will go. Anger and rage appear on Shi Xiao's face because the monster is heading towards where his family is. The young hero turns toward his companions and suggests they go to safety. The girls refuse Shi Xiao's offer and say they will help him deal with the strange creature. The heroes quickly head to the source of the enormous energy and hope to be able to save the refugees. Bright lightning flashes now and then in the dark sky, and the heroes are gradually approaching the dangerous place. The group notices strange cultists circling a giant crystal and speaking words in an unknown language. The red crystal emits a lot of energy. Inside it are several skulls. The young hero, along with his companions, looks at the cultists and guesses that they created the rift. The girls attack the cultists without delay and hope that they will be able to interrupt the sinister ritual. Around the mysterious cultists appears a magical barrier that reflects all projectiles. Shi Xiao uses his unique ability and summons fire wolf heads to break the barrier. The young hero attacks the barrier with fire magic, but none of the attacks reach their target. Shi Xiao takes his two-handed blade and uses both hands to try to break through the barrier's defense. The young hero has a cold sweat on his face and uses a lot of magic but can't break the barrier. The cultists continue their sinister ritual and pay no attention to the heroes. The girls look at the magical barrier with surprise and don't understand why Shi Xiao can't destroy it. Above the young hero's head appears his robotic assistant, who analyzes the barrier's weaknesses. Shi Xiao takes out a magic crystal from his pocket and uses it to destroy the magic barrier. The magic stone passes through the magic barrier without a problem and lands behind the back of one of the cultists. The young hero turns to his assistant and asks him to find an item connected to the energy shield. The robot assistant demonstrates to Shi Xiao a turbo booster that matches his master's requirement. Shi Xiao is unsure about using the turbo amplifier, but the robot insists on using it. The young hero is determined and will use the item he got from the school treasury. In Shi Xiao's hands, two magic items combine to form a pipe power shield generator. The cultists pay no attention to the young hero's actions and continue to utter strange words. The girls closely watch Shi Xiao's actions and hope the young hero can break the barrier with a new item. The magical artifact creates another magical barrier near the cultists, which begins to interact with the protective field next to it. The magical barrier begins to spew out a massive stream of energy and significantly damages the cultists. The young hero beckons the girls over to him and asks them to hide behind him. A loud explosion destroys the energy shield, and a massive stream of energy bursts out and flies in different directions. A massive explosion crater forms in place of the giant crystal where the magical ritual is held. After the crystal explodes, the magical spatial rift shrinks, and a few monster claws disappear into the night sky. Shi Xiao advances to the center of the explosion and marvels at the fact that several dark mages survived the crystal's destruction. The young hero grabs one cultist by the shoulder and demands answers to his questions. The cultist smiles widely, and his entire body lights up brightly, and strange runic symbols form on his body. The girls look toward the explosion in surprise and try to figure out what happened to Shi Xiao. The young hero manages to put a shield in front of himself and escapes the destructive energy of the blast. Shi Xiao turns his head towards the next cultist and hopes that he will have all the answers. The dark mage laughs loudly, puts his hands up, and prepares to self-destruct. The girls ask the young hero to be careful and are amazed at how badly brainwashed people are. Suddenly, the cultist becomes silent. He silently stares at the sky and makes no movement. The young hero uses subjugation magic, and the cultist begins to obey his new master blindly. The dark mage falls to his knees before the young hero and says he will fulfill any decree of the new deity. The representative of the underground market looks at the young hero with amazement because she is surprised by his extensive knowledge of magic. Along the edges of the city, another group of cultists is going to call an ancient deity into this world. The young hero scrutinizes the creature's giant claw and resents that someone wants to build a new world. Mrs. CU tells the young hero about the presence of many factions that worship an ancient deity. The cultist looks faithfully at his new master and talks about the specifics of the ritual around the crystal. The young hero looks menacingly at the dark mage and demands that he tell him everything he knows. The dark magician falls into complete madness and starts beating his head against the ground with all his might. He says that all his words are valid. Xiao stares at the dark mage in amazement and is struck by his insanity. The cultist is about to give important information, but suddenly his eyes light up brightly and he is about to self-destruct. The young hero quickly approaches his companions and uses an energy barrier to protect everyone from the blast. Xiao looks carefully in the direction of the explosion. She doesn't understand why the cultist has broken free from his control. The girls thank their savior for his help and note that the young hero is powerful. The young hero carefully examines his surroundings and discovers shards of a giant purple crystal. Xiao scrutinizes the crystal shard and asks his robot assistant to investigate its properties. Many information panels appear around the crystal, and the robot tells us it is an ancient artifact of a blood demon. The young hero scrutinizes the demonic crystal and realizes he must fight a dangerous opponent. Xiao abruptly turns to his right side, notices that the communicator is making noise again, and brings it back into working order. Huan points his finger to the sky and asks his companions to pay attention to the strange phenomenon in the sky. A flash of red lightning flashed in the sky occasionally, but the monster's huge claw slowly disappeared into the spatial hole. The young hero reflects on the events, and behind his back appears a giant monster preparing to destroy him. Xiao abruptly turned around and was surprised to see that someone had managed to give the monster a fatal blow. Cheng looks at the young hero with a smile and asks the heroes if they are all right. The young hero examines Cheng skeptically and begins to suspect the man of having ties to dark magicians. She said Xiao thanked the mercenary for help, but Mrs. Jiyu was heartbroken. Madame Shiyu looks at Cheng with a displeased expression and demands that he explain what he is doing in this place. Cheng becomes very worried when a gun is put to his head and asks the girl to calm down. The young hero diffuses the situation and talks about not fighting in such a difficult situation. In the mind of Xiao arises a cunning plan with which he will bring Cheng out into the open and discover his secrets. Mrs. Shiyu agrees to calm down but tells Cheng that she will closely monitor him. The young hero asks the mercenary not to worry and says Madame Shiyu is acting extremely recklessly. Xiao asks the mercenary to pay attention to the dark sky and explains the situation to him. Cheng sighs heavily but says she will help the young hero and his companions. The mercenary leans on Xiao's shoulder and says that completing this task will help him greatly in his promotion. Ruantian tells the young hero she is a burden and asks her companions to go without her, but Xiao disagrees. All the heroes go to the site of another ritual to stop the call of an ancient monster into this world. Xiao and his companions quickly reach the next place where the ritual to summon the ancient deity is held. Cheng is shocked when Xiao talks about the cultists using his squad's technology. The mercenary is confused after the charges against him and talks about his group's dealings with different people. The young hero joins the dialogue and says he trusts Cheng completely. Cheng nervously rubs the back of his head and talks about helping destroy the magic barrier. The mercenary pulls a clever invention from his pocket and hurls it towards the cultists to destroy the strange barrier. As soon as the magic item reaches the barrier, it creates a gap, and the impregnable sphere begins to collapse. Cheng immediately rushed forward and dealt with several dark magicians with his blade without slowing down. The mercenary's face is slightly smiled, and he hopes that the team will be able to trust him now. Suddenly, a bright flash of energy appears near the mercenary and is directed towards a giant bardic crystal. The magic crystal shatters into several small shards, and Cheng stands still and does not move. Xiao holds a giant blade at his back and tells the mercenary to destroy the cultist's crystals. The mercenary ponders the situation and realizes that the young hero is not as simple as it may seem at first glance. When the group reaches the last crystal, the mercenary asks everyone to move away because he's going to destroy it. The young hero ponders the situation and assumes it can't be that simple. Suddenly, the crystal begins to emit strange energy and attracts the bodies of the defeated cultists to it. The dark wizards scream loudly in pain, but at the same time, they praise the god they worship. The young hero quickly draws his sword and demands his group prepare for battle immediately. The crystal transforms and turns into a giant demon that has monstrous power. The crystalline monster rushes forward without delay, but a mercenary appears in front of it and deflects its blow. Chung blocks the monster's punch, but takes significant damage and is surprised by the monster's strength. The monster tosses the mercenary aside without much trouble and attacks Lady Xiaoyu. Xiao comes to the girl's aid and deflects the monster's attack with her shield. The young hero struggles to hold off the onslaught of the monster and gradually loses his health. Xiao jumps back sharply and tries to think of a strategy for the next strike. The young hero decides to counterattack. He quickly runs up to the crystal monster and holds up his blade. Xiao strikes the monster's chest with all her might with her sword, but only causes minimal damage. Lady Ziyu extends her hand towards the young hero and asks him to retreat before it's too late. The monster uses his sword for a lethal attack and shouts loudly that he won't let the humans back down. The crystal monster, with a wide grin on his face, watches the strange object that is rapidly approaching him. The mercenary uses a special crystal to create a barrier and quickly asks the team to leave the battlefield. The monster smiles at his opponent and destroys a special-level energy barrier without much trouble. A Chung, with surprise on his face, grabs the unique sword that Xiao throws him and doesn't understand what's happening. The young hero smiles at the mercenary and talks about how they must defeat the monster by any means necessary. Zhuang Tian clutches her head in terrible pain and tells her squad that she has found the monster's weak spot. The girl points to a piece of crystal on the monster's back and says that this is its weak point. The young hero summons a robotic assistant who offers to improve his blade to pierce the monster's armor. Xiao asks Mrs. Xiyu to lend him her weapon for a short period of time, and the girl agrees. The young hero combines a gun with a magic crystal, creating a weapon much better than before. The young hero's team tries to dodge the crystal monster's attacks while Mrs. Xiyu waits for the moment to attack. Mrs. Xiyu creates several of her clones and fires at the monster from all sides, denying it any chance to defend itself. The young hero and the mercenary watch the girl's actions in amazement and are amazed at her abilities. A Chung gives the young hero a rare item, immediately rushes into the thick of the battle and asks him to trust him. The young hero summons a robotic assistant and asks him to find an item to increase the power of the mercenary's gloves as quickly as possible. The mercenary fights from the last strength, but his health indicator is rapidly decreasing, and he does not know what to do in such a difficult situation. A young hero appears on the battlefield, apologizing for being late and dealing critical damage to the monster with his new weapon. Xiao clenched his teeth tightly in anger and threw a huge punch with his new mechanical arms. The crystal monster howls in pain and asks his deity to come to his aid and destroy his enemies. Xiao lands on the ground and gets into a fighting stance for another attack. The young hero moves at full speed toward the monster and pays no attention to its tirades about the strange deity. Xiao manages to break through the crystal monster's defense, and several crystals fly apart. The crystal monster becomes enraged and sends many crystals towards the young hero. The young hero is extremely surprised by this turn of events and realizes that he does not have time to dodge such an attack. Xiao's team comes to his rescue, repelling all the small crystals. The mercenary asks the young hero not to relax. A wide smile appears on Xiao's face, and he thanks his comrades for their timely help. The young hero jumps high up and his mechanical arms transform, allowing him to gain a lot of energy. Xiao is about to deliver a fatal blow, but a powerful barrier surrounds the crystal monster. The young hero hits the magic barrier relentlessly and realizes he doesn't have enough power to reach the monster. The crystal monster laughs loudly at the young hero and calls himself the chosen of the gods. The monster rejoices in his absolute defense and shouts loudly that no one can stop him. The young hero is on one knee and trying to recover with healing magic. Xiao summons the robot assistant and demands quickly find an item to boost its performance. The robot assistant spreads his hands and informs the young hero that no items are left in his inventory. The young hero turns to his companions and asks them for a potion of strength that he desperately needs. The mercenary and Ruan Tian talk about how they have no more items, and Mrs. Xiyu is thinking about something. Xiao goes to Mrs. Xiyu and says he is willing to pay any price for the potion of power. Mrs. Xiyu tosses an elixir of power in the young hero's direction, but warns that it has side effects. Xiao grabs the elixir and tries to understand what side effects we might be talking about. The young hero analyzes the elixir and, with the help of a panel, learns that it will weaken significantly after a few hours. Madame Shi Yu looks at the young hero, who drinks the strength potion without hesitation and ignores the consequences. The young hero wipes his mouth with an iron hand and says he has no time to delay. Xiao's body is filled with immense strength, and he quickly reaches the monster to deliver a fatal blow. The young hero moves tremendously quickly and strikes the monster with his iron arm. Because of Xiao's strikes, a powerful vortex of energy is formed that completely surrounds the monster's body and prevents it from moving. The crystal monster's face is replenished with fear. The monster is afraid that his energy barrier might not save him this time. The monster creates an energy barrier, but the young hero has no problem breaking it, and hundreds of shards fly in different directions. A hole appears on the crystal monster's body from the young hero's blow, and it cries out loudly in unbearable pain. The monster's body emanates a lot of energy, and the monster says that his patron will finish what he started. Without delay, the young hero strikes the crystal monster and promises to destroy all the cultists. After another blow, the crystal monster falls to the ground, shattering its head into hundreds of burgundy crystal shards. Xiao falls to the ground from exhaustion and tries to catch his breath after a hard battle. The young hero's face is covered in a huge amount of dust and dirt, and his body has completely exhausted its resources. Xiao hears a strange sound and tries to lift his head to see what's going on around him. The mercenary. And Cheng approaches the young hero, holding a sword around which lightning bolts gather. The girls quickly block the young hero's body and warn the mercenary that they will protect their friend in any way they can. The mercenary's face looks grave. He will attack Xiao very soon and send him to the other world. Suddenly, An Chung quickly stuck his sword into the ground and asked the girls to calm down and not jump to conclusions. Mrs. Shi Yu points her gun at the mercenary and says she doesn't trust An Chung's words. Chung nervously scratches the back of her head and tries to explain the reason for her strange behavior. The mercenary walks past Mrs. CY and talks about how he can deal with the group at any time. Chung helps the young hero stand up and offers help during his weakened state. The girls look at the young hero with slight surprise and are amazed that Xiao is able to move on his own. Xiao leans on the mercenary and says it's time for the group to move on. A robot sidekick appears near the young hero and asks him to be careful around An Chung. A Chung gently sets the young hero down on a large rock and offers to take a small rest for a short time. The sky of the ruined city fills with bright light, and the spatial rift finally disappears. The young hero stands up abruptly and urges his companions not to relax because dangerous monsters may be around. Xiao's eyes slowly close, and he collapses on the stone from fatigue. At the same time, Ruan Tian anxiously looks in his direction. The young hero gradually recovers and suggests that Mrs. Shi Yu try to contact other people. Xiao opens the information panel and contacts a representative of an influential family to find out the situation. Mrs. Shi Yu looks at the young hero with surprise and is amazed at his interaction with a representative of a large family. Mrs. Mo stands on the building's roof, and behind her back are bodyguards who ensure the safety of their mistress. Xiao suggests Miss Mo meet at the secret passage that leads to the 8th district. Mrs. Mo is surprised to see the coordinates of the secret passage and is amazed at the young hero's skills. Xiao becomes embarrassed at being called a genius and informs Mrs. Mo that he can easily get to the meeting place. A mercenary with a snide expression approaches the young hero and notes that he has a special relationship with Mrs. Mo. A Chung helps Xiao and the heroes head towards the 8th district. On the bridge in front of the entrance to the 8th district, a vast number of people in cars are piled up, all demanding that the guards let them inside immediately. Commander Wang, along with the young hero's family, reaches the 8th district through a secret passage. The young hero's mom is apprehensive about her son, and Shi Yunfei tries to calm her down in every possible way. Near the secret passage, Xiao appears with his companions and greets his family with a wide smile. The sister hugs her brother tightly and talks about how worried she is about his life. The family gathers in a circle, and everyone discusses the recent events. At the same time, the robot Nana stands by and watches the reunion. Tears appear in the robot girl's eyes, and she says she's pleased to see her master again. The young hero gently strokes the girl's head and thanks her for saving his family from dangerous monsters. Xiao slowly turns around when he hears a familiar female voice behind him. Mrs. Mo stands at the head of her bodyguards and tells Xiao that it's too early to relax. The girl pauses for a second and then reports that a red-tailed Bayou has appeared and is trying to sneak into the 8th district. Xiao clenched his teeth tightly with anger and clenched his fist because he was unhappy with this turn of events. Mrs. Mo notes that the boss is at level 90, and this information greatly surprises the young hero. Ruan Tian hugs his mom tightly, and Mrs. Shiyu can't believe the boss has a high level. Mrs. Mo looks around carefully and notes that she has reliable information about the boss. The story shifts to a few hours before Mrs. Mo is confronted by a dragon-like creature that sizzles an entire city in seconds. The black dragon looks around carefully and stares intently in the girl's direction. The bodyguards create a protective barrier and tell their mistress to leave the city as soon as possible. Mo's body begins to shake after remembering the monster, and she warns that the beast is mighty. Xiao puts her hand on Miss Mo's shoulder and says that if she survives the encounter with the dragon, the girl will be powerful. The bodyguards give the young hero a thumbs up, and Xiao says that his actions are misunderstood. Mrs. Mo folds her hands on her chest and says she has detailed information about the dangerous monster. The dragon-like monster is in a special space, and around him, a huge number of stars form constellations. The dragon walks calmly among the streets of the burning city, and many people call it one of the bosses of Qinglong's side of the world. The young hero listens carefully to Mrs. Mo's account of the strange creature and contemplates a plan of action. The Han clan mobilizes a special unit and sends it towards the city to destroy the monster. Mrs. Mo looks unhappily towards the mercenary and notes that many clans first sent their fighters to kill the monster. The young hero thoroughly questions the monster and tries to find out why the factions want to destroy it first. A smile appears on Mrs. Mo's face, and she tells Xiao, that you can get valuable treasures for destroying the dragon. The girl shows the number 2 with her fingers and talks about getting about 2 billion gold coins for the treasure. The young hero's eyes turn into coins, and he wishes to try his luck in destroying the dangerous dragon. Xiao becomes very confused when a mercenary approaches him and asks what the young hero is up to.